Good evening. The January 7th, 2025 organizational meeting of the Mentor Board of Education is called to order. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 3313.14 of the Ohio Revised Code. Mr. Wade, please call the roll.
Ms. Cook.
Here.
Ms. Iapolo.
Here.
Ms. Jessling.
Present.
Ms. Marchaza.
Present.
Ms. Payne.
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me.
Okay. At this time, we have the nomination and election of the president. Do we have any nominations?
Yes, I nominate Amy Payne.
Thank you. Any more nominations?
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Meg Cook.
Thank you. Any more nominations? Any discussion?
I do. So, you obviously were last year. Before we go into president and vice, I feel like, can we talk a little bit about what you're thinking about for vice president? Because just like last year, balance is something I think we need to see. We didn't get that last year. So what are your thoughts on vice president?
Well, we have a motion right now for president, so we're going to talk about nominations for
Well,
president.
I mean, I remember watching some of the previous organizational meetings, and you guys are pretty forthcoming. There was a lot of wheeling and dealing, and I want to do it this year, next year. So you guys always, you don't feel comfortable sharing your vice president thoughts? It kind of matters about our votes.
We take it a step at a time.
Okay, well, that answers my question. So if you're going to be president for a second year in a row, Maggie, and you were vice president the year before, could you talk a little bit about some of your accomplishments as president in the last year, since you're asking to do it again, or you're being asked to do that again?
Since I'm nominating, would you like
Sure,
to?
yeah.
Okay. So as part of the Mentor Board of Education for the past 12 years, I've worked with 11 different members elected by our community. Mrs. Cook embodies their best qualities despite unprecedented challenges. She takes her responsibilities seriously, has superb attendance, and is always well prepared. She brings fairness and insight to this job while maintaining her key role as a champion for public education and mentor schools specifically. Her 24-year career offers key knowledge of special education and the law, and she has experience with labor negotiations, and these are two areas that are far and away dominant in the district's budget. A 3-year member of the Safety Committee, she's worked diligently to bring the contract for security officers to completion while prioritizing the safety of all. And having experienced the dreadful 2012 shooting at Chardon, she has a unique personal perspective. With a close eye on prudent spending, she's been a member of the Citizens Financial Advisory Committee, and she worked actively with the Levy Committee in 2023 to advocate for both the renewal and permanent improvement issues to meet the identified needs of our schools. Based upon the district survey published in June 2024, Mrs. Cook seeks to represent the community's needs while prioritizing transparency and parental support. She transformed our student achievement reporting to better inform all stakeholders. She maintains confidentiality and extends balanced oversight without micromanaging the CEO and CFO. She conducts board business from the table and strikes to seek calm rather than to inflame, taking the high road despite an often contentious climate. She's organized, moderate, and patient, abides by the law, and concentrates on compromise that is best for the children we serve. She connects with students by attending a full array of K-12 events and programs and maintains her focus on their wide span of individual needs. Her children have been mentor cardinals since kindergarten, and Mrs. Cook offers valuable continuity of leadership. That was my reason.
Can you talk a little bit about the history of how president, vice president is usually just picked?
Sure. Going well back for 20 years, Mrs. Charlene Goronsky was president for that continuous period of time. And we've had a variety of things. I think Mrs. Briner served a couple of consecutive terms. it just depends. So there have been patterns, but they're not fixed, and we don't have anything in the bylaws that defines them.
From what I remember, before I was on the board, there was some, wheeling and dealing. For instance, you wanted to be president when, Tom Tuttle wanted to be president when his grandson was graduating, so he could sign the diploma, and everybody was willing to allow, that cross, party lines, I guess you could say.
We never, I don't want to interrupt you, so go ahead and finish.
Well, he was a minority member, and so that showed that they were able to kind of come across.
We never, ever had that division until the last 4 years.
Right, this was
2
2 years ago.
2 years ago he was president.
So, I just say that because you've been on for a while, you're the most tenured here, and it's always kind of been really easy, and, asking, would you like to do it? No, I don't want to do it, this one will do it. It seemed very casual and fair to make sure that every single person and was able to have the opportunity at least to serve as president and or vice if they chose in their term. So I'm just unsure why you're not offering that same opportunity for Annie.
I'm just looking at who I think would fulfill that role in the strongest way possible for this coming year. So it's not personal against Annie or anybody. I just look at what I think would be good continuity. We have labor negotiations coming up. We have perhaps a levy coming up at the end of this calendar year. And I look at that continuity of implementing our strategic plan and the qualities that I think she brings to the job make her an ideal choice.
Okay, well, I just feel that having the president 2 years in a row and vice president for the year prior, I just don't see that there's balance there. I don't think that that's very fair. And I think Mrs. Payne has more than proven herself worthy of an opportunity. I'm just going to name some of the things, some of her accolades. Following the failure of the PI levy last year, $2.5 million of the $10 million dollars in necessary district reductions were identified thanks to Mrs. Payne's insightful questions regarding discrepancies in our bus purchase program and current route totals. Upon further review by Mr. Wade, which he mentioned at a meeting, her inquiry led to a $2.5 million reduction. This achievement underscores why school board members must remain vigilant, analytical, and proactive in questioning programs and policies. So you mentioned something about micromanaging. I don't think that's micromanaging. I think that's doing a good job.
I wasn't referring to anybody in specific.
These traits, they not only prevent waste, but also contribute meaningfully to the district's financial stability. Whoever we select as president, as you know, and those are one of the things you mentioned, that Mrs. Cook was able to has served 2 years on the Citizens Financial Committee because she was given those positions 2 years in a row. I believe that Mrs. Payne demonstrated that she'd be an invaluable asset to the financial health of the district. So it's worth noting that she has not been given this opportunity, and that's fresh eyes to sit on that Citizens Financial Committee. So I think that's for that reason. I think that she's more than qualified and deserves the opportunity. She recommended the creation of the safety committee that you mentioned she sits on, and the curriculum committee, which have both proven to be extremely beneficial. She compromised on the resolution against arming staff who were qualified to carry a firearm during school, as is allowed per House Bill 99. Despite being a personal advocate of the bill, she agreed to support the resolution contingent upon the board's efforts to implement retired police officers as SROs or SSOs and ensure coverage for all of our buildings, and that is what led to her creating that safety committee. She consistently advocated for the SSOs, and Mr. Heath should be, hopefully we are going to be voting on that, finalizing those contracts soon. She recommended the new process that we follow for the review of any new curriculum and targeted emails to parents whose students are affected by any changes. As board members, we now get to review any curriculum changes well in advance of the vote. These changes came out of discussions where Mrs. Payne expressed concerns about age-inappropriate topics in our K-5 books. and wanting transparency for parents. She's an executive board member of an Ohio school board organization, the Ohio School Board Constitutional Coalition. She was chosen to present a class at this year's OSBA Capital Conference, as you all know, and on behalf of OSBCC. And that's an opportunity. I don't think that anybody on the mentor board, as far as we know in the history, was able to do that. She's a staunch supporter of parental rights, as seen through her sexual content policy that she proposed that passed 5-0 to protect students and uphold parental rights. This policy was rescinded this year, as we all know, with a 3-2 vote. It should be noted that this policy aligned with the newly passed Parents' Bill of Rights, House Bill 8, and although we rescinded the policy, we will be tasked with creating a similar policy to comply with the law. She collaborated with me on the need for better enforcement of our cell phone policy and supported the changes that were made recently. She supported putting the levy on the ballot last year, allowing the community to decide on that matter. And despite not having children who attend our schools, Mrs. Payne has selflessly served the members of this community, students, parents, and taxpayers, by dedicating her time, energy, and passion for this community. She has a proven record of paying attention to detail, assuring compliance with policy and law. She isn't afraid to raise questions, as we know, and those are qualities that make a great board president, in my opinion. She recommended changes to our public commentary policy to put us in alignment with what the law says we can and cannot allow. She prevented our board president from censuring a speaker's comments, which violates the law and could have put us in a legal predicament. She saved us from some big parliamentary procedure mistakes that could have cost the district to be sued. Mrs. Payne conceded to change public commentary to allow speakers to only speak once on agenda items and once on another issue, to avoid speakers from being able to be up of a mic unlimited times, while still allowing them to have opportunities to speak. And finally, she was named Citizen of the Year by Mimi Magazine for her dedication to our school district and to the community. So these are the reasons I think, at this point, last year, it was funny, I was reflecting on this meeting and reflecting on the year, and I went back to some of my notes from last year, this very meeting, and we had my notes were pretty much the same as they are today. I think that this past year, looking back, this was not a great year of us sitting at this table. I don't think it was the year I anticipated at least starting. I was hoping that we would work together and we would have just kind of work together as one and have a little more balance, and we didn't see that. So I think the writing's on the wall. I think my words are just more for people to hear the missed opportunity here, but I encourage you to rethink your decision and to give Mrs. Payne that opportunity. I reached out to you, Maggie, to discuss this, and obviously you had already spoken with Mrs. Jessling, so we couldn't have a conversation, but I wanted to start the new year off right and with balance, and to kind of put forward to the community that we are working together and that we are going to have representation from everybody. And I really hope that it feels like your decisions are made, but I hope that just hearing some of the things that Mrs. Payne has done will sway you to give her that opportunity, her last year. Do you think, Maggie, because you ran last year or you were the president last year and then again this year, do you think that that's fair and equitable to the group to do it twice when some haven't done it at all?
I don't think that it is unfair. I think that it can be an advantage to the district because there is a learning curve to it, and to really allow for the continuity. And I also think that I've done a really fair job, and a good job as president. So I'm honored to be nominated again. I think it was a real honor to serve as president, and it would be an honor to continue to serve. So I happily accept the nomination.
Okay. Bill, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you think it's good to have fresh eyes on the Citizens Financial Committee?
I serve at the pleasure of the board. I don't really, the board members are just there to be observers. They don't typically participate. It's the Citizens Financial Advisory Board. They're the ones that are doing the reviewing. I can ask philosophically do I think it's good to have different sets of eyes on it? Well, yes, because that's why we have the Citizens Financial Advisory.
Mm-hmm.
That's the intent of the group. So I guess that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
But there is nothing different. There's nothing that we learn in Citizens Financial Advisory Committee that we don't, that isn't present to the board.
No, it's
We
the
all
exact,
see.
it's almost the exact same presentation.
So,
Well, but the reason that you have it is so people can maybe look at this and say, and think of, make suggestions, look at, point out
The
things
business,
that you.
the people on the business community can give a set of eyes because that's more the world they live in than typically the people who sit on the board.
Okay. Well, if, you know, last year I said to you, if we can have balance and you can support her as vice president, I said I'd support you as president. And given that this is your second time, I don't feel that you are the best option, and here's why. I think you abused your powers, Board President, by attempting to violate the law and censoring the speech of a community member. Luckily, she stepped in. This community member is part of a large organization that's litigious when needed to be, and that saved us from a lawsuit. You called the vote on a contract that was not properly uploaded in the system for all board members to review, which is, I think, a liability. When this was brought to your attention, you resorted to name calling to Mrs. Payne. You blocked 2 board members from working with our board attorney, which is not a power that the president holds per the policy. You've proven that you can't be impartial when it comes to gambling. We've had a lot of complaints about that, and that's an important responsibility to maintain order at our meetings. You used your position as board vice president to endorse candidates for school board. And further, you did not abstain from voting when one of those candidates was up for, we were voting on their employment. And finally, you allowed your husband, who's a member of the Mentor Zoning Committee, to be present during an executive session with the board where discussion about a potential tax abatement was had. This was done without advance notice to the superintendent or other members of the board. And this is a violation of our bylaws as it was a conflict of interest or the appearance thereof. So, you know, I'm not trying to, I was hoping to not have to go there. I was hoping to come here and be completely shocked and surprised and just, you know, I'm gonna be pretty frank. I think that the decision is petty. I think it's very petty. Maybe it's because you're running next year and you want that title. I don't know what it is. It's very petty and I'm kind of embarrassed and it's unprofessional. Again, I still will have hope that maybe one of you will give her the opportunity. I know that's how you would want to be treated. This board's gonna look very different next year. And I think you guys would want that, you know, us to, the majority next year to be fair. So, you know, that's really all I have to say.
I'll just have a couple comments. Thank you for the nomination. I appreciate
Are you
that.
smiling because we're talking?
no.
Just gave her a look. Let's be professional.
I think-
just looking.
I think that's not professional there. I mean,
Okay.
let Mrs. Payne speak, and if we look in each other's direction, I think that's pretty normal. I mean, I see you do it all the time, so, yeah.
Oh,
The
Louise.
camera picked up what I just saw, so that's okay. Go ahead.
Likewise, Rose.
You guys.
Really?
Come on.
Really?
Okay,
Let's
Mrs. Payne
please.
has the floor.
No, I mean,
Please go ahead.
this is, you know, we're all here to serve.
Absolutely.
We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion all the time. I don't think it is very equitable to have the same person be vice president, then president, then president. I don't have a problem being not president, but I do think there needs to be balance. I think that we need to have president and vice president balance. I think that when I came to the board, even though I very much disagreed with Mary Briner's stance on pretty much everything that was a hot button issue, I still voted for her to be president because I was told that it was very, very procedural, that it was, you know, everybody was going to get a turn, and that the only reason she was president 2 years in a row is because Tom Tuttle wanted to sign his diploma for his grandchild. And then I also voted yes for Mrs. Cook for vice president, even though I disagreed with you on several things. I don't think that, I think like Rose said, it is petty. And I think we should have balance. I think I more than deserve a spot on president or vice president, humbly. I don't, you know, I am not here to say that you don't deserve a spot. You did have a spot. I voted for you the first year for vice president. But I think you said it's not personal, Jenny. I feel like it is. Because what I was told when I came to the board was everybody gets a chance. Wouldn't you want our students to feel valued? Wouldn't you want them to, talk about equity? It's not equitable. It's not fair to have the same person 3 years in a row be, vice president, then president 2 years in a row. It's just not. And I do think I have made whether or not you guys agree with me, not having my kids in the district, I was still voted in. So I know that keeps getting thrown around, and I'm still, even more so, the fact that I don't have my kids in the district, but yet I do volunteer and I show up to events and I put my heart and soul into this job to serve our community. I think I deserve it. I think I deserve the vice president spot to send a message to the community, or the president, to just send a message to the community that we are going to work together. I'm not shocked, I wouldn't expect anything different. Unfortunately, I would hope that we could not have this pettiness and that we could start off on a better foot this year. But it is what it is.
Can I ask a question? Mrs. Iapolo mentioned this is your last year. Is it truly your last year?
She meant, yeah,
Oh,
meant
okay,
to term.
gotcha. I just was
Ginny,
curious.
Maggie, and I all will be up for re-election
Yes,
next year.
that's right, that's right. Thank you. I just had that question, but did you want to speak? I just have some thoughts, but you're welcome to go.
No, please go ahead.
So I agree with a few things you guys said there. One being, yes, I think that we've got a lot of work to do. If we're going to work together in the way that you're hoping, Mrs. Iapolo, I highly encourage all of us to consider doing a dialogue workshop. I think that's step one. Before we consider who serves what office, what committee, and so on, I think we need to commit to that. We need to commit to working together, because I totally agree on that. We're not going to get what we need to get done, what we've been voted to get here to do here for the taxpayers. We're not going to get any of that done if we don't manage to dialogue together in a more productive way. And, side glances notwithstanding, right? So a couple things, the very nature of us not being able to really discuss this other than in public, 2 people can talk, but 3 people cannot, as most of us know. I heard a couple of things. This is the first time I'm hearing remarks from anyone, so I heard a couple of things from Ms. Jessling that really stood out in my mind. And first and foremost is champion of public education. That, as most people know, is of utmost importance to me. I was publicly educated through my whole life. My kids go to these schools. I grew up here. Public education is near and dear. In fact, we were in this very room at this very table when, Russ went around during the meeting with Russ from the ESC and said, why are you here? And I said, public education. For me, that is the most important thing. To me, someone like Maggie Cook, who has dedicated her entire career to public education, to serve in public education, in addition to what she does in her off time, which is this, to me that demonstrates that commitment that is so important to me. And if I'm voting my conscience, if I'm saying that is truly my top priority, I don't know how I can vote any other way. What's more, that, again, top priority for me, but what's more, I've learned a lot from watching her become the leader she has become. Of course, I watched you as a vice president when I was not on the board, but now I've watched you grow into the leader that you are, and I've learned a lot from that. I've learned actually quite a bit from everybody here, but what I've seen is that she demonstrates a level of compassion, of empathy, of, I think your word was moderate, but really the ability to manage temperament and emotion. Things get pretty heated in here, no joke. For sure, we've all seen and even all had emotional and passionate moments at this table. But what I've seen from Mrs. Cook is that she's able to kind of maintain a level of calm that is exemplary. And to me, these are qualities of a leader. I think there's also, you mentioned consistency, and I do think that's really important. I didn't even think about the union negotiations that we're going to have to come up, and I know that you have a lot of experience doing that at Chardon. That's going to be extremely critical in those conversations going forward. But what's also at the top of mind for me is the whether or not we decide to put a levy on the ballot. What I've seen Mrs. Cook do over the last year, lead us through our first strategic plan in many years. Kind of spearhead that process, and do it in an informed way that shows that she really has the experience in public education, in teaching, to get us through. So that consistency, I think, is going to be critical for us going forward for the next 5 years. But also, I'm not saying you should serve for 5 years, but I think in that first year of our strategic plan, the second year of our that's really crucial to me. And getting a levy on the back, and I know you've been. I remember seeing you out there advocating for the levy out in the public, and really rallying for our schools. And that's the kind of enthusiasm I want to see out of somebody who is at the helm of this board. So those are just some of the things that I thought about as I heard you all talking.
What do you think the taxpayers want to see?
They want to see somebody who's supportive of our public schools.
And
That's
not
what I
Mrs.
think.
Payne?
I'm sorry, but she's raised her kids in public schools. She has dedicated her career to public schools. It's really hard for me
How
to
do you think she
square
got here,
it.
though?
Excuse me. It's really hard for me to square putting somebody who is a champion, certainly of homeschooling, in charge of public schools, right? And that was your choice.
People
and
voted for me, even
and
though
I
I did.
completely respect that. But to me, it's not the choice of a public school champion.
I would disagree. I think that a lot of people voted for me, even though I was very open with all of my positions
course you
on
were, yeah.
everything.
Not doubting
I
that.
didn't play moderate.
Mhm.
I played exactly and put out to the public exactly what my stance was, and I was still
Totally
voted
agree.
in.
Mhm.
I did have my kids in public school for 2 years. I bought the house I grew up in from my parents because I went to mentor schools. I'm an alumni of mentor schools. So obviously I'm vested. I spend all this time when I don't have to.
No, I'm
My
not
kids are
doubting
not
your
even in the
commitment.
district.
Absolutely not doubting
So
your commitment.
I don't think the position needs to be of somebody who is solely a cheerleader of public education. I think you need to be vested into all the different aspects of what makes a good board member. One of which is looking over our financial information, which I've proven to do and get some savings from, asking good questions. So, yeah, it is going to be what it is, and I think it's going to set the tone for next year, and it's sad, but also not anything that we didn't expect.
Yeah, I think public education is changing from what you guys, are used to, what we've seen, and I think, do we bow to the altar of public education, the institution? No, I don't. I believe in educating kids and that are a good quality education that for families who choose to send them to public school because they can't send them, they have no other options. And I think the community voted for a president that backs that, and so I thought maybe you guys, we're here, we work for the taxpayers, so, but we can
I
move on.
don't think people just choose public education because they can't
I
afford an alternative.
totally agree.
I didn't say that.
I chose
that's
public
their
education
option.
for my kids.
If this is their
Because
I
option.
had other options.
Can't
Good, then you're a percentage that do, but for the most part,
I don't think that's true, and I don't think you have any data to back that up.
we know you only like the data that follows your side.
I like real data.
All right, if we could get back to this
Yes.
discussion, I appreciate the nomination and I appreciate your vote of confidence. I'm sorry that you both feel that this is petty and that you feel that you're being somehow diminished. I certainly hope that I've never done anything to make you feel that way. I have never blocked anything that you wanted to put on an agenda. I listen. I have given you the floor and praised things that you've done and have voted for things as well. I've made compromises and listened to voters on both sides, listened to taxpayers, listened to the information, and created things that were great compromises, like the new book policy, where we're reviewing things and informing. It's the strongest parental rights policy that we know of in the state, that really anyone knows of, as far as informing parents what kids are reading. And that was something that I came up with, listening to both sides and trying to make something work. I'm not here to cause division, and I'm sorry if you feel that way. I truly am. If you do elect me again as president, I just want us to be focusing on the students, on compliance with laws, systems that meet the needs of all students, working within our budget, and focusing on achievement for all students. So I do promise to listen to all perspectives and govern with the best interest of Mentor Public Schools, because that's what I was elected to do when I got a seat, and that's what we were all elected to do. So if I was serving as president, I would keep those same values in mind. I hope you would as well.
I'll add just one more thing, because I meant to address it and I forgot, but I think that balance is a laudable concept, but I do think requesting it today neglects the last 3 years, right? Before you two joined this board, it looked really quite different. People didn't attend the meetings. I mean, before COVID, this board makeup and its dynamics were absolutely different. No one can deny that, right? So to harken back to a past that it's sort of out of context to request balance now. Things have changed so substantially since you've joined the board, both of you. To ask for something from days gone by almost seems anachronistic. So I'll say that, and then I'll also add that it is completely normal for a president to serve more than one term. In fact, Willoughby Eastlake just elected their president, who I think this is her 3rd year. So just for reference, neighboring districts have done it many times. Happened just last night. So that's all I wanted to add.
Just say too, I don't think it's more about days gone by or the previous. I think we're talking about today because it is so contentious. It's even more important to have that balance, to send a message to the community. We know we did hear about it last year when we didn't have the balance with this exact meeting. So, and then for Maggie, I do appreciate you stating those points, but the book policy was not a compromise because I did not, neither did Rose, but 3 of you removed the sexual content policy. And now, because of the Parents' Bill of Rights, we're going to have to add something similar to that back. A compromise would have been keeping that, and then also doing the new policy as well. So I do disagree with that, but yeah, I hope that when we get to the vice president spot, clearly it's not going to be president, that we do have balance, but I won't be shocked when we don't.
It's been discouraging to always have the division emphasized. And one of the pieces that is so hard for me is the social media piece. I think it has undermined the best that we can offer our community because it entrenches misinformation and wild speculation in some cases. I wish it would go away. It's exhausting, and to Lauren's point, the life that this board experienced for decades is nothing like it is now. And the biggest single variable that I see in our larger society is that social media, that clannishness, that everybody goes to their silos. I think it's so destructive. And in order to have best practices, which is what I hoped we would be able to establish when we had Russ, would be, to have some ethical guidelines that we would all agree to, and that just blew up. There was no willingness to have him back. He was characterized as being lopsided in his views and his recommendations, and that was so disappointing because I thought this would be a chance for us to really work in harmony. But drawing that again, when there hasn't been that cooperative spirit, I think it's very frustrating, and I wish it were different. But maybe going forward, if we can set new norms as the 5 of us, so that we're not meeting until midnight and having this constant back and forth, I think it would be a good thing for our community. It would let us all serve better that's where my frustration arises from.
Are there any more discussion? Please call the roll.
So when I say your name, you can state who you're voting for. Ms. Iapolo,
Annie Payne?
Ms. Jessling,
Mrs. Cook?
Ms. Marchaza,
Mrs. Cook.
Ms. Payne,
Myself.
Ms. Cook.
Myself.
Ms. Cook wins 3-2. Ms. Cook is the president.
Now we will have nomination and election of the vice president. Do we have any nominations? A nomination for Annie Payne.
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Jessling to continue serving as well.
Any discussion?
I mean, you just said you were looking for change. This is the change. This is your opportunity to start fresh. Otherwise, it's just talk, Jimmy. It's just talk.
I disagree that it's just
You think you
talk.
need to be two in a row and you've been
Well,
here 12
since I
years.
nominated her, I could talk about why.
That's okay. I don't think anybody wants it.
You don't wanna hear it?
No, because I know it's.
Well, I'm gonna say it anyway.
Yeah, you're
Oh,
free to
right.
say it, yeah.
So, I think similar to what I said about Mrs. Cook, I've learned a lot from Mrs. Jessling. I could say just over the years, because you've been serving so long and I've been watching these meetings for so long and attending them, but I think you're an exemplary board member. I started to talk to you, but you're right next to me, and it feels awkward to talk about you without looking at you. But truly, like, I've never met anybody who is so devoted to what she does. Don't cry. But I truly mean that. Like, you're at every event. You show up in every way possible for our schools. Your student achievement reports make me cry almost every meeting, or smile, or both. I can tell you love what you do, truly. You've dedicated your career as well to public education. You are a champion, no doubt, for public schools. And I'm really just astounded at the level of commitment that you've made, not just in your professional life, but your post-professional life to the schools. And I see you interact with students and staff and parents, and it's just, wow, I've got a lot more to learn, but exemplary, and I'm proud to serve with you and alongside you. You have stepped up, even in this past year, which has been pretty tumultuous, but when Mrs. Payne decided she no longer could serve on the Mentor Foundation Committee, you stepped up to serve on that one, taking on additional meetings and work. So I just, again and again, I've seen you step up and be a leader that, I think, again, those are the characteristics I want to see at the helm of this board and of this district. So, sorry, but that's truly speaking from the heart there. I vote my conscience, and this is why I will nominate and vote for Mrs. Jessling to serve as VP again.
For not being allowed to discuss it, seemed pretty organized.
That's quite the accusation, Mrs. Iapolo, and I
that was just
100% reject that.
That was just a comment. That wasn't an accusation.
It was an accusation.
Mrs. Jocelyn, what in your tenure, what policies have you proposed or changed or that you could brag about?
We can't hear you. So over the last, all these years, the formality of policy creation was entirely different until 4 years ago. At that time, things were shifting. So my role in terms of policy was more dramatically advanced when we had to deal with COVID, how we would navigate the one-on-one devices, how we would create the environment where our students would be able to learn. The cell phone policy that you had mentioned, I had proposed a year before, and Mr. Heath would have that email. So again, working in tandem, it was never these separate initiatives, but they were common discussions that we had as a board in order to achieve what we saw as needs from the district in response to the superintendent primarily, and also the CFO. There were aspects of labor negotiations, for example, things that may or may not have been on the table. So as part of that advisory function that we as a board had, and that's done in executive session, so I can't reveal those details. But those were the kinds of things that we were able to step forward and look at specifically. And then, of course, individual discussions with the superintendents, whether it was Mr. Miller, Mr. Porter, or Mr. Heath. And that whole selection process that brought Mr. Porter to us after Mr. Miller left, that was the year I was board president, and that was a pretty contentious time. And there were a lot of personnel details surrounding those issues. And I did my best to do what I felt was in the best interest of the leadership of our district and the stability of our district. And same with issues that had to do with the treasurer's office. There were some details that were important to have some deeper discussions about. So I'm not in a position to go over those items because those were individual discussions that were generally in executive session. But, you know, I stand by my years of service, and I thought long and hard when I ran the last time, because my first question to myself was, you know, what was my goal? What was my commitment? And how did I see myself being able to continue that, even though things had gotten very contentious by the time we had the last election. But I decided that I absolutely had that fervor for public education in our school district specifically, that I could commit to being all in as I had tried to do for the 8 years prior to that. And I've done my darndest to maintain that commitment. That's why I still, if I'm aware of something going on, or I get an invitation from a classroom teacher that they're doing something, or there's a festival, or whatever it might be, I do my best, if I possibly can, to attend those things. It helps me stay in tune and connected with what our schools are doing. And then when somebody in the community approaches me and asks me something about whether it's class sizes or programs that are going on or the climate in buildings, I can speak from my own on-site experience in some cases where I've had a chance to be in the halls of the high school or participate in an event or listen to kids perform or read or whatever it might be. So to answer your question, it's not a roster of specifics, it's a general enduring commitment to the details, and I've done my best to honor that commitment on behalf of the community.
And this is your third term, right?
This is my 12th year.
12th year. Okay. And have you ever sat with anybody in those 3 terms that did not have an opportunity that wanted one to be president or vice president?
Sure.
Do you recall?
Yes.
Do you recall?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Did you support that?
No, but it went anyway, and that was okay.
Okay. So now you're in a position that you can.
Yes, because this is what I do know. What matters is not so much as whatever decision we make, but it's the harmony of the rest. And after last year's showdown, is my best way of describing it, again, the misery of social media, for Pete's sake. I thought that was ill-advised and did not help us to work better as a whole to set aside an external statement. But that's just me.
When you refer to social media, what are you referring to? Just people talking and commenting, or are you referring to posts that we make? Okay, so you don't like, you have
No,
a
I
problem
just
with-
thought your press release in that regard was not helping.
So you're punishing us.
No, I'm not
for-
punishing you.
For being transparent with the community.
No,
Okay.
you're entirely free to do whatever you wish.
But you're keeping her from an opportunity because you don't
I'm
like that
not
we
keeping
are
her.
forward.
I
Was
think-
there a lie in our press release? Did we misspeak?
I don't have that in front of me.
So.
But let me just say, my reason for nominating Mrs. Cook was I feel she has the best leadership profile that I'm looking to see continuing. And there's nothing punitive. My invitation would be when we sit with Russ or we're trying to work together and a decision was made, one of our ethical practices is to be supportive of whatever the decision was made. And, you know, if we're gonna have to fight about everything, how is that gonna be a good thing?
I think to your point, you know, I think what you're referring to probably are the norms that we set up with Russ when we were together here, which included speaking with one voice, and your press releases, I think, is what she's saying, kind of went against those norms. And it's sort of like we set these norms and understandings, but then disregarded them going
I didn't
forward.
accept those
No,
norms.
no, mm-mm.
They were
Okay.
presented.
Well, at any rate, if we truly want to dialogue, work together, whatever you want to call it, certainly, you know, starting out the year by lobbing, you know, accusations about law breaking and funny glances between folks, I mean, like, that's not a good way to start working
And
together.
neither is blocking her from.
We're not blocking, we are voting our consciences, as I said, which is I mean, I would expect the exact same of the two of you. We are entitled to our votes. We are entitled to vote with our experiences and our
Yes, absolutely.
convictions, and I expect nothing less from the two of you.
Okay, I have a couple points. First, champion of public schools. I know you keep saying that. I am a champion for whatever works for the student. That's not always public schools. It's just the case. But everybody pays taxes to the schools, so they need a voice. I think I represent that voice pretty well. Also, I think that the claims about social media, what about the claims about you two endorsing candidates last year and them putting it on, you know, you guys put it on your social media? So it just seems very targeted. We never came to consensus about what should be expected and what shouldn't. I think our votes and us sitting here at the table and working together is what's going to make that dynamic change. Somebody coming in and talking to us is not going to do it. It has to be a group effort of us working together. This is one way that we can show the community, because I don't think the community is just looking for a cheerleader in us. I think the community is looking for balance, neutrality, a centrist position, and I don't think they've seen that. I think coming off with the new year and saying, hey, you know, look at what we did. We're trying to have balance. We're trying to start off on a better foot. You know, I have to go back to the equity piece. We always talk about equity, and I don't see this as being equitable. I think this is not how, if the board flips next year, because there's going to be an election, 3 of us are going to be up for re-election. I can't believe that this is how you guys would want to be treated. There's other boards that have division that give everybody the same opportunity. And we're seeing it in other boards where they flip the board and now they don't like that they're being treated the same way that they treated other people. I just think we should treat other people the way that we want to be treated, and I don't think this is a good example of that. Unfortunately, I don't expect anything different, but it is what it is.
I think to your point about working together, I think we've shown over the last year that we do need somebody to help us on that. I'm the first to admit it. I want to drive that, you know, aspiration toward dialogue so we can be more productive. We have shown that we can't do that alone. I think we've shown very clearly we need somebody to help us on that, which is why I brought up Braver Angels. Whether it's I don't care necessarily who's leading it, as long as it's as long as we're all comfortable with it, right? So I think we've shown that we can't do it alone. We do need somebody to help moderate that discussion, those discussions, and that effort. So that I wanted to point out. But I think, yes, absolutely, I agree. It's what's right for the student. But a reminder, we sit on a public school board. You are supposed to be a champion, a cheerleader, an advocate, an ambassador, whatever you want to call it. We sit on a public school board. public school board, these two people have invested their kids, their careers, and their post-careers in public schools. I think that's amazing, and those are the kind of people I want to see leading our schools.
Just to make a couple other points, people with kids in the public school system do not make up the majority of our taxpayers. 70% of our revenue, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is from people who don't have kids in our system. If we don't have people cheerleading as people who don't have kids in the system, our levies aren't, they're going to be at risk. So I just think you don't have to be just a cheerleader for public schools. You have to be invested in public schools and how we spend our money. Where does that money go? That's part of the reason what got me here is because we spent $400,000 on a DEI training that was all about white privilege. And our community rallied 75 people to a board meeting to say that's not what we want. So yeah, things did change after COVID. That was one of them. And after that, I was elected. So I just think we need to look at what does the community want as well. And I don't think anybody's going to fix it unless we all start making different changes at the table. Russ was the third person I think we've had come in. We had OSBA came in twice, and then Russ was the third.
Getting lectured to by someone is not going to work.
No.
Action, like you guys having two different representatives, that's a start for me. That's a olive branch, but I'm not going to sit and be lectured to by somebody
No.
telling me
It's
how
not what
I
I'm
should follow
suggesting
mine.
we do either.
But
That's what it's
that's
been.
what it was. So, okay, we can
Yeah.
move on.
Is there any more discussion? I just wanted to also throw my support to Ms. Jessling. She has been, just really a tremendous example to me since I've been on the board. I really admire that she has, not only had, 18 years in public education, and then, like you said, it's your 12th year on the board. You've really invested yourself in this district. You're passionate about it. You've served on, I feel like you've served on everything that I can think of. As you were asking about her resume, and I was kind of like thinking, okay, you've been on Citizens Financial, you've done maybe you haven't done legislative liaison. I'm not sure about that.
No, I haven't done that.
You did student achievement. You've worked on, really, every single thing. Mentor Schools Foundation. In your own personal life, you've done levy committee. You've done curriculum. You've done. You are everywhere too. You are in the classroom, you are at all kinds of events, sporting events, music events, art, a champion of the arts. You support people, you talk to people, you're so invested and so connected to the community, and I really appreciate that. But beyond that, you are calm and you listen, and you never inflate and cause division among us, which I think is truly appreciated. So I thank you for that. And with that,
You're not suggesting she causes division, are you?
at times she does.
Can you give me an example?
I prefer not to bring that to the table right now. If there's no more comments, please call the roll.
Ms. Iapolo,
Mrs. Payne.
Ms. Marchaza,
Mrs. Jessling.
Mrs. Cook,
Mrs. Jessling.
Mrs. Jessling,
I'll vote for myself.
Ms. Payne.
Myself.
Mrs. Jessling wins 3-2.
Okay, next we have the board representative appointments. Do I have a volunteer for the OSBA Legislative Liaison?
Oh, I'll volunteer for that again.
I'd like to nominate Rose. If she'd like to do it.
Would you like to accept that nomination? Okay.
I'd like to discuss why I think Rose would be really good
Please.
at it. Obviously, I nominated her last year. She, said she would like to do it. I think she would do a great job. I think she's even added to the legislative report at times with additional information. Seems like, she's always staying on top of current legislation and anything coming down the pipeline. I know she leveraged her relationships with 2 of our legislators to schedule meetings with the superintendent and treasurer to advocate for financial assistance for the district. I would be remiss not to mention that our state senator obviously is her dad, Jerry Serino. Although I know he would treat everyone with the utmost respect and have full confidence that he would work with any one of us. Clearly being family, I mean, most of us have kids, we would treat our kids a little different and they'd have a different access than everybody else. So clearly being family allows for a special type of connection and networking that could really help us in continuing the conversation, especially around the budget, since he's slated to be the chairman of the Senate Financial Committee. So I think she would do a really good job. I do think Lauren did a fine job, but I took issue with a couple different things. The last meeting, you urged people to contact you to oppose a bill, and you kind of add your opinion instead of the facts onto the bill updates. You'll make like little comments about them.
Do you have an example?
Well, specifically the last board meeting, you did ask people to feel free to email you for you to give them a template on how to oppose and contact their state senator and rep.
That was something that OSBA was advocating for. We are members of OSBA, and it was.
But
to
that's
support
outside of
public education.
I believe that's very outside of the legislative liaison position. And I don't believe we should be using, our time to lobby for or against
Public education issues?
specific bills. Yeah,
Okay.
because you have to remember, we support all taxpayers who make taxes to our schools. Not all of them have kids in our system.
Yeah.
Actually, the vast majority of them don't. So, anyways, so trying to get people to become activists and support or oppose a bill directly using board time, I believe, is well outside of our scope of responsibility of the legislative liaison. I want to know, why was there no urge for folks to call and support the Parents' Bill of Rights, or the religious time release, or maybe the bathroom bill? It seems like it wasn't pushed because you didn't have, personally support them. This is not how the legislative liaison position should be used. In fact, when Tom Tuttle was the legislative liaison, he was reprimanded by Mary Briner one time when he added his opinion onto one bill as a legislative liaison. He then apologized and didn't put his opinion with any of those statements again for his legislative update. So I think that because of that, like I said, outside of that, I think Lauren did a fine job, but I just think, I think it's Rose's turn. I think she would do a wonderful, wonderful job.
I'm trying to find what bill that was, but at any rate, I'll just say I find it a little distressing that I heard you say one thing and then say the opposite. So I heard you say Senator Serino would absolutely support Mentor schools regardless of who serves in the liaison position, but it's no question that he would give his daughter special access. I mean, like, that is distressing
He's
to
gonna
me.
answer my call before he answers
Yeah.
yours. I'm
It's
his
his
daughter.
daughter.
I'm gonna knock on the door if I need to get something. I mean.
Well, one would
you're
hope as
making-
our representative, he would answer anyone's call
okay,
because he
okay,
represents
okay.
this region, but,
Sure.
okay. I mean, that's distressing. So, at any rate, I believe that I've done a very thorough job of reporting the legislation that has been coming down that pipeline, as Mrs. Payne put it, over the last year. I put my whole heart in it. I find it very interesting, and I even stepped up to serve on the policy committee, which, we no longer, I guess, are going to be doing, because I do think those things go hand in hand. I find them very fascinating. It's something that I keep tabs on every single day, and I make sure to make it my business to know what's coming and what could impact our district. I met with all of the legislators as we were able to. I do appreciate you reaching out to legislators to set up those meetings, though you did leave me out on that communication and correspondence. So in the future, I would expect, that we would do that in tandem. So, I mean, that distressed me as well. So at any rate, I went to Mr. Wade and Mr. Heath very early on in my tenure saying, hey, let's start meeting with legislators. I think it was you, Mr. Wade, who told me that, wow, we really haven't done that in the past. That wasn't really customary, I think, is what you said, for legislative liaisons to prompt those meetings, unless I'm misremembering, but that's.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
That what? I didn't hear that.
They didn't do it.
That in the past, the
It
legislative
wasn't
liaison.
yeah, the legislative liaison who prompted those discussions. Usually it was done by the superintendent or CFO.
Right. So I made it a point to take that initiative very early on to step up and say, hey, put me in, coach. You know, I even offered to go down and provide testimony at the State House to advocate for our public schools whenever necessary. So I showed up to those meetings. I certainly voiced support, advocated for funding, for everything from safety to mental health to infrastructure. So I certainly feel I've done my part. I hope you all feel the same way, and I'd love to serve again.
If the legislative liaison wasn't usually the point person to arrange those meetings, why was it so out of line that I went around you and?
Well, we should be working in tandem. If you're the proxy.
Exactly.
That
was
was
my
no.
proposal
If you're,
today.
please let me finish answering the
Oh.
question. If you're the proxy to me, the legislative liaison, I would have expected and would have done you the same if I was your proxy, to at least copy you on the email inviting a legislator to meet, which is not what you did.
Well, I explained why I didn't.
Well, at any rate, that's.
Okay,
I'm
I
gonna-
think we're losing the point
No,
here.
I'll
you
make my
can't
point.
cut her off.
I didn't copy you because it was his private email, and so I didn't feel comfortable CCing somebody.
Okay.
That was my
I have a
reasoning.
question though, just to clarify. Did you copy her in the initial email when you sent them to the legislators?
I didn't do that. Mr.
No.
Wade did.
I actually wasn't even on that. My dad.
I wasn't either.
Told me about it. So
I mean,
anyway.
I think you arranged the meetings.
You didn't even copy Lauren to arrange the
I'd have to
meetings?
look.
Yeah, I don't
Are
really
you
recall.
distressed
but-
he didn't copy you? You're distressed that I didn't copy you?
I asked him how he would prefer to proceed, and he
laughable.
said that he would be happy to reach out on my behalf, and he did that.
Okay, well,
Do you support OSBA and our membership in it?
I support a lot of what OSBA has, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. And I think we have a good relationship with them because they asked us to do a presentation. So
With OSBA, in the past, I know Mrs. Payne objected to our membership, and you voted no
right,
along with her. So why would you want to be legislative
because
liaison?
first of all, it doesn't say OSBA legislative
Yeah, it
liaison.
does.
In our
Yes.
policy,
In
it
our
does
policy,
not.
it does not.
Nope, it just says legislative
But
liaison.
the whole
in our
point of
policy.
it, the whole point of it is to educate each other, so we're not all putting that time in, and further to educate the community. I don't think it matters whether it's through OSBA.
Just like student achievement is not
Yeah.
OSBA student achievement anymore.
Well, it is in our list.
It's not in our policy. You can look it up. I have it right here. It doesn't say
And
that.
my reasonings for not voting for OSBA isn't a criticism of who they are as a whole and everything they present. I was very verbal about that last year.
But you
So-
voted to not be
Right.
a part of this organization because
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
on the whole, you agreed with its mission and its
Not
work.
its mission. I agree with a lot of that there was a lot of advantages. We can talk about that when we.
Yeah, I
when we
feel
go
like this
to
is
it.
like a red herring. Like we're throwing out something out there that doesn't actually relate to this position because our policy just says a member to serve as legislative liaison. It doesn't say anything about OSBA.
The report that you get, isn't it from OSBA though?
Yeah, I
It's
use that, and then
generated.
I also
Mhm.
use
So you
the
don't
State
have
House
to,
updates,
yeah.
and I use
Yeah,
media,
there's a
I use a
lot.
lot of things
There's
to
a
kind
lot.
of call.
There's more
pull
than
everything
just that that
together.
you use. 'Cause there's a difference between previous OSBA legislative
Because
reports and
Tom
this.
always took whatever OSBA,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
he
It
was
was Brian
Him and
McHugh
Mary,
as well.
yeah.
wax eloquent.
It's much more automated now, I think, that you don't have to. I know there's a lot of newsletters that my dad has shared with me that I was able to see some things on there, and I think it'd be a great opportunity. I think, again, that's petty to do it 2 years in a row and know that I can work with my dad on this
Yeah.
stuff. It's just, again, you talk about let's have mediations, and this is your turn, this is your chance, but, you know.
I love doing it, so I'm gonna accept the nomination.
I think Rose, I think it's laughable to think that she wouldn't have some kind of different access to her father. I would hope that me, as a mother, that I would give my child first dibs before any other child if I was the legislator and they came to me with questions. Because that's your kid. You're going to treat them differently. I mean, I would hope that most parents would treat their kid differently than any other kid with access to them. And I just see it as such a benefit, especially with him. We're talking about levy and everything, but he's slated to be the chairman of the Senate Financial Committee. We have his daughter sitting on our board. How are we not going to use that as to our advantage? It doesn't make sense to me, and it seems petty again. So.
we're done with discussion, could we call the roll?
Ms. Payne,
Rose?
Ms. Marchaza,
Myself.
Ms. Cook,
Ms. Marchaza?
Ms. Iapolo,
Myself.
Ms. Jessling.
Lauren.
Ms. Marchaza will be the legislative liaison.
Do I have a volunteer for the OSBA Legislative Alternate Liaison?
Sure, I'll be volunteer again.
Would anyone else like to volunteer? Please, I guess, Mrs. Iapolo will be our Legislative Alternate Liaison. Do I have a volunteer for the OSBA Student Achievement Liaison?
I'll be happy to continue unless somebody else wanted to do it.
Mrs. Jocelyn will be
It's a
the
time,
Student Achievement
Yeah.
Liaison.
I
Thank
love
you
it.
very much.
I really do.
Thanks, yeah.
Do I have a volunteer for the Mentor Schools Foundation representative?
I'll do it unless you really enjoy doing it, or
If you'd
I've
like
never
to-
done it, so.
Yeah, if you'd like to, go right ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so that's
looking forward to it.
Is there anyone else that would like to
I
volunteer?
have discussion on that real quick. We had gotten something that said, you know, we possibly shouldn't vote on the Mentor Schools Foundations if we sit on that board when we get like a grant from them. Do we ever follow up with Eric on that? Do you guys know whether, because our bylaw specifically states we should avoid a conflict or even the appearance thereof. And I know when I went to the first couple foundation meetings, there was.
I think it's the vote at the Mentor Schools Foundation.
Yes.
We have to
meetings.
abstain
We don't-
from that
We don't
as well.
vote there.
But because it says appearance thereof in our bylaws, can we just check with him to make sure?
Mhm.
Because I never felt comfortable voting when it said,
Check
Check with
on-
Eric.
On what? I'm confused on what you're asking.
to see if it's a conflict.
I know what she's asking.
Yeah,
Okay.
to approve
Grants.
at
All right.
our
Craig's
table
got it.
of the grants,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll take care of asking
And to be
that
clear,
question
you
again.
don't vote at the Mentor
Ever.
At the
Schools
table, yeah.
Foundation.
Right, you're not a
Right.
voting
So you're
member.
not a voting member, you're sitting there.
But you're not even supposed to talk is what I believe, I swear we talked to Eric about this, or
I think
there's
they
something
can-
like we're not allowed to.
I think you can talk just to share insights into what maybe some of the grant pieces might be,
But
just
then
to give
wouldn't that
some
be a
information.
conflict? If
That's
then
how-
we go and vote for them to add it, like if we accept the grant, I
We'll-
would just
we'll
double
get
check on that.
clarification.
My understanding was the reason a board representative is part of it is to be able to be that conduit to share with the larger board what the nature of any discussions were, kind of where that nexus came from. Because that money is not district money, the money
Right.
is foundation money, and they have an entirely separate operation, you know, for a treasurer and fundraising and all the rest. So we're there to help and support and then, you know, potentially answer anything that might come up about
Yeah.
it. But in all the years that I'm aware, I think Mary did it for a long time. And then she always voted on whatever those approvals were.
Yeah, if we could just get, just to double check.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ms. Marchaza will be our Mentor Schools Foundation representative. And do I have volunteers to serve as board policy liaisons? And we would need 2.
I mean, I'll do it again if we're gonna move forward with it. I know we had discussion about whether or not we were gonna keep those positions.
I know that that'll be on future agenda
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we've started
Yeah.
that, but at this point, because it's in our organizational meeting, we want to make
Sure.
sure that we're following that. So, any other volunteers for board policy?
I mean, it's just
Do-
ceremonial until we get rid of it. So,
I mean, I don't want to presume that we're getting rid of it until
Yeah,
we.
that's fine, you can put my name down.
Okay. So, Mrs. Iapolo and Ms. Marchaza will serve as our board policy liaison. And not listed on here, so tell me if you want us to strike this and go to the next one, would be scholarship committee. The board typically has a scholarship. I mean, we can do it at
that
the next.
independent of this.
Okay,
The organizational meeting is pretty specific to the policy.
sure, we can talk about that next meeting, so think about that if you'd like to serve on our Board Scholarship Committee. Okay. At this time, we have a recommendation to approve the place and time for regular meetings of the Board of Education, and we all received the list of dates. Does anyone have a need for discussion before
Yes.
I go for motion?
I just, it didn't look like we moved the summer ones again.
Yeah, well, we always start out with this and then, and then go from there, so. Your proposal is?
Changing those meetings, I think we did the Thursday, second Thursday, something like that, last summer.
Yeah, we've done a couple different things because the first time we just moved the meetings up.
Yeah.
And then the second year we moved them to Thursdays.
I like the continuity of having the
On
same
Tuesday.
day.
I was thinking that too, actually.
Was there an issue last year, this summer, with
A different day?
the having it? So I think people appreciated that, because
Yeah.
they can go to the Mount of Rocks.
I had a few people just get confused because it went from Tuesday to Thursday.
Right.
And they were just like, no, they're always on Tuesdays. And I know, but we're changing those. So I was getting those kind of comments. I know that Mentor Council moves their time up. So theirs is always on Tuesday, even though, obviously they're at Mentor Rocks because they're putting it on. And they just move it up earlier to, I think they start at 5:30, I'm not sure. And it didn't seem like a problem when we moved it up to 5:30, so.
I feel like I got a lot of
Yeah, that people couldn't
people
come.
couldn't come because they weren't even off of work by 5:30, and they couldn't come. They couldn't sign up to speak in time. I think with city council is a little different than ours.
Yeah.
we get a lot more public commentary at our meetings.
Do you
than-
think with ahead of time signups that we have now, though, that would solve that? 'Cause
No,
by the
because
time we
I
get
just
to-
think from what I received from people, it was too, and we even had our meetings went over and then we'd start hearing the music, and that was distracting.
Mhm.
So I would be a proponent of doing Thursday again.
Yeah,
It's
just
just
for
June,
summer,
July, and
right.
August.
People get used to it. I mean, especially if we're consistent in every
Yeah.
summer, we change.
See, I heard
change it.
differently. Like, I heard folks being very pleased that they were earlier, because then
I
they
did too.
got out at a more reasonable hour. So I guess I heard differently.
Is there a way we could put out a survey to the community, asking just like a Google form or something, asking? if
We have to
people-
establish the
Yeah, we
meeting
have
dates
to
today.
establish it today.
Per
I
policy.
mean, you said a couple people were not sure that they.
I mean, I wouldn't
confused.
say a couple. I had several people saying
Enough that you
It's
think we should
Tuesday.
change it? Because it's.
just enough that I think that staying consistent has its merits, is what I would say, is why I'm just bringing it to the
Well, this
table
would be
today.
consistent with last year.
We just moved it earlier.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
But I don't know that that's all, I mean, I feel like that's not really that consistent either, because then we're taking it from a later time and moving it up to 5:30 when people are
But
getting
at
off
least
work
it's
at
the
5,
Same
5:30.
day though. Yeah.
And we've had a couple of times where we've had an earlier meeting time, like the one time we had executive session, we were called to order at 5:30, had our executive session, then continued.
Well, that's the other thing, is executive session. If we have a meeting at 5:30, and we need executive session, now we're looking at 4 o'clock, 4:30 meeting.
Well, I
We would
couldn't
do it
do that.
afterwards.
That's why I'm
and
saying, I
then
don't
do
think
that.
that makes sense. I think
I think last year.
afterwards we're gonna have the music too, it's gonna be distracting.
We agreed to it last year because it was, it was more, not moving it made people feel like they had to choose between,
Yeah.
paying
But as city
attention to their-
council, it's their show. If they're not moving their meeting date, and it's their event, that they're having the concert outside their door essentially, and they're continuing to stick with Tuesday, to me that,
I don't think we can compare city council meetings to ours. Their meetings are like an hour, 45 minutes to an hour and
ours
a half.
used to be.
Yeah, well, that was before parents knew about everything that they disagreed with COVID, so. I mean-
The other point is, I was gonna bring the, and maybe it's not even worth it. I would, and this is really discussion, I don't really care either way. I mean, 7 o'clock works for a start a meeting for me. But moving all of our meetings up to a 5:30 start time would allow us, if we have executive session, to put it after, because right now when we have executive session, it's like a special meeting beforehand, which.
Oh yeah, and then we have to. That's separate. And then are we paid twice for that?
Yes.
Ah.
So if we
okay.
put executive session at the end, then saves
I like that.
money.
Yeah, I like
Because
that.
we've been doing it at the beginning because sometimes when we have executive session, we have guests coming in
Mm-hmm.
and then we're making them wait, or our meetings are ending so late.
That's a
But
really
if
good
we
point.
put executive session at the end, it does save it does save, I mean, a considerable amount of money, really.
Right, 125
So-
times 5 for each meeting. That would cut it in half.
Yeah.
That's some savings right there.
So, just for the board to consider, we could move all of our meetings to 5:30, or we could just have really late execs. I mean, it's just something that might.
Isn't Willoughby East like at 6?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
we could go
there.
somewhere
6 is
like at
fine.
5:30.
6.
5:30 is
Good
too
point.
hard
Am I allowed
for
to
people
give an
getting out
opinion?
of.
5:30 is early.
Yeah.
5:45, 6 o'clock.
6
6 is
o'clock.
fine.
6
Mhm.
o'clock's a
Yeah,
more
6.
reasonable time. Like if you're leaving, like even like I can speak personally. Like, my kids have games at 4:30, 5:30. It's tough as a professional to get to. So I can appreciate that concern.
6 is good for me.
But I know like Willoughby East, like I've learned recently that they start at 6.
They do.
Like that seems like a much better start time than 7.
Agreed.
I think if you're looking for compromise, just thought I'd throw that out there.
I mean, either works for me.
I'll go back
It's
to
actually
taking
a little
notes.
early for me when I leave work sometimes
Stay in
to
your
do
room.
5:30, but it's also like we are having a lot of executive sessions, and so it's adding up. And then, we have a lot of staff that stay really late for these meetings, so it would.
We ask our administrative staff to
Yeah.
come. I mean, they're part of all those meetings. Or Mr. Hammond's over there typing away. He's the good soldier.
Our officers.
Yeah, I mean, they are the officers, and
Mhm.
so if we could move everything to 6 o'clock, then there wouldn't be any variation. It'd be Tuesday at 6,
So all year round?
all year round.
I like that.
Then you don't have to have special times and no confusion.
It doesn't solve the issue though of the music playing
Yeah.
No.
at
At
7 o'clock.
7.
Like for
Right.
Is
someone
it
who has sat
that
through
in
those,
the
like I have a hard
finance?
enough time hearing you
Yeah, it's
guys.
distracting.
It is.
Like as it is,
Is
it is.
that in the
Yeah.
Fine Arts Center too?
Very
Yeah.
bad.
Okay.
It was noticeable.
It was,
Yeah.
okay.
It
So I mean
honestly was.
that's a legitimate concern. I mean from a standpoint of just
Conducting
decorum
business.
of a meeting, that going on.
5:30 then for the 3 in the summer.
I don't
I'd like
like
to
that
move it,
because
yeah.
then we're still stuck. If there's public commentary, then we can't hear because they start at like 7. Well, they start at 7, but they start testing the music at like 6:30. So it just gets. I think it's too loud. I think what we did last
Yeah,
summer
I think last
worked.
summer worked and people appreciated it. They didn't have to pick and choose
Yeah.
which ones.
I had so many people the year before that were like, I feel like I have to pick between going to the Men of Rocks and going to the board meeting because
Yeah.
they couldn't even speak until let's say they were speaking on agenda item, not on agenda items. They couldn't speak until the end, and so then we're looking at Men of Rocks already starts and then it's hard to hear them. I just think it.
I don't think we noticed a difference from a data standpoint in the number of
Oh, is
public
that right?
speakers on Thursday versus Tuesday.
That's helpful.
I mean, if we're looking for things like that, I mean,
Yeah.
either way.
we'll show up at either time you want us to. I
Wouldn't
think-
you like to go home?
And I think the people who come to our meetings typically find a way to show up. Both ways. I didn't notice a difference at 5:30 on Tuesday either. I just noticed from my personal experience of sitting in this room and at the Fine Arts Center when the music starts, it is distracting.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't feel too strongly about the day, I guess. I think an earlier time, especially in the summer, is good. I like the earlier start time.
I can do an earlier start time
Yeah.
too. But I do like moving it on that during those summer months to Thursday or any day other than Tuesday.
I know, it's fine.
I think we picked Thursday because it had the fewest other.
Other events?
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
With the city and
somebody
everything,
had
yeah.
Wednesdays or something, if I recall correctly.
So when we look at
Our calendars.
June, would that be the 12th? Because I know one of the things happened last year, we had to move it up because we hadn't projected this, because I think it was super early, like maybe the 5th, like that first
Oh,
week.
yeah, that's right. Oh, but there was a vacation that we were trying to avoid too, I think, Rose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
So
don't
we'll
forget,
move
I just will
something.
throw out, as I
Yeah.
remind you every year, the 27th will have, or maybe even Monday the
Yeah.
30th, you know, one of those days to close out the fiscal year, we need to either do it the 27th or the 30th. So,
But we could do that separately, right?
yeah, 100%, just,
So
Okay.
what dates would it be?
So
if
let's
we did
do,
Tuesday?
could we do all of our meetings on 6 o'clock with the exception of June 10th moves to June 12th?
I was actually gonna ask because of a vacation, if we could move the June, that to the, at least the Monday, the 13th or the 14th. I'm out of town until,
I would be out of town then. So I could do up until the 12th. Like I could do,
When are you out?
I'm out the, hold on, I'm in January. Wait a minute, don't even listen to what I was saying because I was in January. Okay, I'm out of town I can't do the 7th through I'm back. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, the 7th through the 15th, so I could do the 16th
Okay.
or the 6th.
I don't think we've ever adjusted our dates for that purpose, to be
We
honest.
did last year for me.
We
For
did.
you, because you had no advance warning, because you didn't know that you were going to
Oh, and get on the board.
Yeah,
get on the
Thursday.
board,
Yeah.
but otherwise you've never done. Now, and there have been people who've had vacations or whatever and had to miss. That's not that unusual. But for the community's consistency,
I think though, if we know like ahead of time that she's already got something scheduled for that week, we should try our best to accommodate everybody.
we've never done it, is all I can say.
But we're changing June, July, and August anyways, so what's the harm in trying to accommodate to make
What's
sure
the
we're all
June?
We
here?
can skip a meeting also.
27th?
We could skip a June
We-
meeting.
thank you.
Wild.
That's true.
Since we're
Right.
doing the.
Yeah, we could
the
do every other-
We used to,
financial
We
one
this
could
at the
do
end of
June.
this used to
June.
come up in Kirtland, we never had a March meeting for the same reason, because most of the board members went on spring break.
Oh.
And the way that our meeting sat, that we would often skip that meeting. So you don't have to have a meeting, and we will have a special meeting again at the end of the month.
That's true.
Okay.
By policy, we're only required to have a meeting once every 2 months. So theoretically, you're only allowed.
I remember
you're
you saying that
required-
last year.
And I saw it when I was reviewing policy again recently. I said I should.
Salivating.
Yeah, I was. So, I mean,
Are
If
we okay doing
you
that
could,
to
that is an option.
help you out here?
Mrs.
and-
Payne's point about the fact that we're already switching dates, what does it really matter is an option. Keeping it as the 12th is an option. We do
So-
meet a lot.
We do, you're right. And I mean, that gives you time. You would say have our special meeting to close down the fiscal year on the 27th
Or the 30th?
Or the 30th,
or the 30th.
because it has to be done by the 30th.
And if
because
we-
the 30th is a Monday this year, we could theoretically do it on the 30th.
And if we found a need to meet, otherwise, outside of a regular meeting, we could attach a meeting onto that one conceivably, right? Like-
So,
We would
it wouldn't be a
make-
regular meeting, it'd be a special meeting,
Special
and
meeting.
we would have to
Right.
delineate in the
Hire
sunshine
people.
notice
Right. if we-
what the purpose is,
Mhm.
and then obviously, kind of foreshadowing to the first reading of the policies,
Mhm.
the special meeting sunshine notice dictates the agenda.
Right.
So if we're gonna have HR items or disciplinary actions or approval of finances or whatever it might be, because you remember last year, we did the
Right,
month
yes.
finances for May
Mhm.
at that meeting, because I didn't have enough time
That's
to
right.
close the month to have that ready because we were so early. So as long as we define it in the sunshine notice,
Okay.
it can be on the agenda. If it's not, it
I'm
can't
fine
be.
with that.
So for purposes of setting our regular meetings, we're doing Tuesdays at 6 with the exception of no June meeting?
I have a question. Are you guys at all concerned about like moving it without asking the public who normally comes to our board meetings, like, are they okay with 6 instead of 7, or, you know? I mean, because we've got constituents on both sides, all sides. And I just want to make sure we're not just jumping the gun and not like.
I've always heard that theirs are so
asking
late.
people.
Like, that's a complaint that I've gotten frequently from folks. Like, why are these so late? So I've never heard like, I love 7 o'clock. Like, no one's ever said that to me. Like, this is a perfect time.
I don't have a problem with 6.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, in the.
No, fair point.
You know, I just don't want us to all say 6 and then we get emails, you know, from both sides saying, hey,
I think as long as we're clear and there's plenty of time
Notice.
that people will know. And I do think it's a consideration for the 2 other people at this table that are not elected officials who have
Note
to come
takers.
along for the ride.
And also us, you know, talking about executive session going to the end now for cost savings is a
Right.
big,
I really like that.
it really is a big,
but what if we have like our
Consideration.
attorney come and he has to sit through the whole, and we pay him hourly, and he has to sit through our whole, like,
We
how would
can
that work?
break.
We can tell them
We've
not to
been
show up
talking
till
about
8 o'clock.
this.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can break, can't we? We can adjourn to executive session and then come back.
We could set
You could.
executive session at a
So
certain.
we
You
have-
could start the meeting with executive session and tell the people that the regular meeting will start after that.
Right. So
Could be
there's.
the
So we could
first-
start
it
at
could be a-
6 for
yeah.
executive session?
Well,
Is
you
that what
start
you're
your regular meeting, read the mumbo jumbo, do the pledge of allegiance, and say the board's gonna go into, to discuss personnel matters.
It's like as an agenda item.
Go
Correct.
into like recess to
Yeah.
executive
Yeah.
session.
And then come back.
And then come back.
Because as long as it's motion and voted on, and it has the reason,
Yeah.
you can do that, yeah.
Makes sense.
And I would suggest that based on the storms we've had at various points and power outages, let's try for June the 27th, so we have a fallback that still meets the deadline for
Oh,
what we
yeah,
have
that's
to
a good
approve.
point.
Yeah.
So we do June
That was
27th.
why I was saying the 27th or the 30th, yeah.
Yeah, so 27th and the 30th is our,
Fallback.
just in time.
Okay.
But
That wouldn't be for
that
a
would be,
regular meeting.
that wouldn't be a
that-
regular meeting though,
that's-
so in June,
Yeah.
if I'm
So
hearing correct.
June,
So
no
no
regular
regular
meeting in
meeting.
No
June.
regular meeting, but we could, if, what I'm
Physical
saying is if we have a
close.
scheduled meeting for the 27th and
27th.
something
So no
happens, we
June
can't
meeting.
have it, we can have it on the
Correct.
30th,
Yeah.
we'll just, we'll have time to notify.
And then our July meeting will be on the 10th. And are we keeping the 6 o'clock time to stay consistent?
Yes.
That makes sense.
July
Yes.
10th at 6 o'clock. And then the next one would be August 14th, also at 6.
Oh, question, that June 27th special meeting, is that also at 6?
For,
June 27th?
yeah, I mean, we can.
Okay.
Sure.
Usually we do it at 5:30, but
Oh, I don't care, it doesn't matter to me.
Does anyone have a problem with doing that one at 5:30?
No.
The 27th?
Yes,
Yeah.
just because that's not one that, like, the public comes to speak, so we wouldn't have that sign-up issue.
And then August 14th, you said?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So those are the Thursdays in July, the second Thursday in July, the second Thursday in August.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Do we need to vote on that? Do I need a motion with those changes to approve the regular time and place?
motion to
and
approve the regular
time and
meetings
place
with the
places.
changes, yeah.
Places, Fine Arts Center,
So
everyone's,
moved.
Second?
please call the roll.
Can I ask another question?
Of course.
Are we ever planning on coming back to Paradigm instead of Fine Arts? I much prefer, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I prefer the lighting in here. I think it's good to see people face to face. I know we did have one, meeting that was very
That was why
tumultuous
we ended up
on
moving
all
it.
ends, it was across the board. But I think in the past few meetings we've had, they haven't been like that. So I didn't know if we were ever gonna give it a shot in here again. I think I would like to, but it's not something I'm gonna, not a hill I'm gonna die on. So if you guys prefer it in Fine Arts, then
Our administrative team prefers them in the Fine Arts Center. All of them.
That's fine.
Okay, so place Fine Arts Center and regular meeting with the adjusted schedule that we discussed
Mhm.
and time. Okay,
So,
and we had a motion from.
Ms. Jessling.
Ms.
I
Jessling.
seconded.
A second.
I can
There's-
actually hear everybody extra close.
Yes.
There's no weird speakers going on, or it only plays on the left side.
speaking
Yeah.
of
Right.
Fine Arts Center.
Yeah.
Right, please call the roll.
Ms. Jessling.
Yes.
Ms. Marchaza.
Yes.
Ms. Cook.
Yes.
Ms. Apple.
Yes.
Maybe
Ms.
we could
Bain.
give them those
Yes.
little paddles.
Yeah. Like an auction.
Yeah.
Next, we have approval of agenda items 9 through 25.
Can we do one at
Which-
a time? Or do we have-
Sure, if you'd like to. I have no problem with that. So our first one is approval of membership to the
Hold. Can I ask a question? Just from
Sure.
a clerical standpoint?
Yes.
Are we gonna do them all one at a time, or do you just wanna pull certain ones out?
We can pull certain ones out, that's fine.
That
Which would you
be
like to
Let's
highly
do
appreciated.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, no, I'm just kidding. 8, 9,
You mean,
We-
oh, sorry,
just
9, 10.
9 and 10?
um,
You want those together or separate?
They can all be in one, it's fine.
So you want to vote for 9 and 10 together?
Or they can be separate, I don't care. Yeah, as long as they're not with all the rest.
Are you okay with putting them together then? 9
Yeah,
and
that's
10
fine.
together, okay.
Are you guys doing them? I think that was it, I had.
And then we can vote 11 through 25 together?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now we have approval of agenda item 9, which is approval of membership to the Ohio School Board Associations for 2025.
Do we need a motion?
Motion to approve?
Um,
Are we doing 9, 10 together or separate?
Together, I thought.
I'm sorry, you're right, 9 and 10 together, so we're gonna do, this is for approval of membership to the association, and then also approval of membership to the association legal assistance fund. Do I have a motion?
My motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
This will be our 70th year.
70 years?
Yes.
Oh my
Mentor-
goodness.
Mentor Public Schools was one of the founding members of OSBA, as I understand it. And last year was our 69th year of membership, and this will be our 70th year.
Wow.
And I know there were concerns about the advocacy cost out of our dues. And I checked with OSBA, and it's 2 to 3% of their overall budget is for advocacy, and membership dues are 42% roughly of their total budget. So it's a factor that would be less than 2 to 3% based on 40%. So about 1.5% or thereabouts is, and with the dues that we pay, we save $13,000 on our Board Docs Pro subscription, and the PNC P-card program that we use, I believe, for our charge cards. We save over $27,000. Just those two items far outweigh the cost of OSBA, so it's a
Could you say
benefit.
the P and, what did you
It's
say?
the PNC P-card program, as I understand it.
That's it's
Which
our
is-
credit card.
Our credit
and then our
cards.
rebates every
So
year.
because we're members, we get how
Yeah.
much off?
Well, this year we saved, I'd have to go back and look it up, I presented it at a meeting, I'd have to go back and find it.
What did you have
But
to?
what OSBA gave me as a number was that we saved over $27,000 on that and $13,000 on the Board Docs Pro. The difference between buying it by ourselves.
Yeah, I think that
I thought it was
Board Docs
4,000.
is 40,
4,400.
Yeah,
that's what I thought.
4,400.
That's what I thought.
Of the savings.
it would have been
Yeah.
13,000 total, we only paid 9,600, so there's a
Okay.
savings of
Gotcha.
4,400.
So it still means that the vast majority of the dollars we invest go for all those other services, including the legal hotline and legislative stuff and
The conference too,
the
right? 'Cause we get a
conference,
discount
all
on
the work
conference.
that they do to advocate for public education. And as a founding member of that organization, one of the things that when NSBA had that tremendous pushback that
Mhm.
allowed many people to withdraw from NSBA,
Including us.
including us, what was noted about OSBA is the value and its role that it has played historically, because we've got one of the best associations. And so I appreciate that, and I think it's money well spent on behalf of our district.
Mr. Wade, the discounts that we receive as a member, does it basically make the dues a wash?
No, I mean, the $4,400 is an actual savings.
Okay.
I'd have to compare
And then the
PNC
that
rebate. I don't
PNC
necessarily, I have
rebate.
to check on
Not
that
sure
one.
what that number was
high.
there.
No, it's not high. I know it's, the numbers is the high, it might, it's somewhere in the $27,000 to $30,000 range from the 2 years that I've had it, that we've reported it out. I gotta confirm that it's tied to OSBA though.
Okay.
I don't know that that's actually true.
Okay. I
But if
mean,
it is
it's
true,
something
yeah,
because we have.
because of the PNC,
Yeah.
we'd also have, we could earn rebates through them. So I'd have to then delineate what's the difference between if we're a member of OSBA versus
Or
just
not.
through that, and that would be
Okay,
the
that's
actual
fine.
difference.
I was
The
confused.
OSBA didn't mention that in there when they sent out one of their-
Benefits.
Yeah.
The Ohio School Plan also as a cost savings for risk management protection, do we participate in that?
We don't.
Okay.
I'll provide an update, my Friday update on those exact numbers for the last couple of years on the rebate, and then confirm whether we're using the PNC rebates through OSBA or not.
So you mentioned the money that goes to legislative advocacy, which I know is a point of contention for you. So we're roughly, it's around $100?
So it's 2 to 3% if you look at
Our dues,
of their
40%
total.
of our dues.
42%.
And
So you would
then, and then what
multiply
percent of
by
that? 3 to 4% of
2 to
that 40%?
3% is their cost for advocacy. So you would look at our dues as being part of the 42%
So
Meaning-
42% of our dues goes to,
to
No,
42%.
they get 42% of all their, like we do, state
Yes.
revenues,
Right.
federal
Yes.
revenue,
Yes.
and taxpayer dollars. Only 42% of the revenue that they have comes from dues from their members.
comes from dues, and then from that
From
amount
their
of
total
Total
revenue.
budget.
ours. Okay,
Total budget, expenditure budget, 2 to 3% is spent on advocacy, is what
Yeah.
they're saying.
so if you had
40% of
to
2 to 3%.
estimate what our,
It's not just from the membership though, right? It's
What
our-
ours
like
is,
classes,
is-
everything goes
Well,
to.
Well, I mean, if
we're
you're,
talking,
I mean, simply
Hmm.
put, if it was 100% of their revenue came from that, and it was 3%, you're looking at, like you said, $334. But in reality, it's less than that because
because it's not
only
100%.
42% of the revenue is coming from taxpayer dollars to
It's
the point that's been raised in the
That's some impressive math.
So
I did it on a spreadsheet.
it doesn't just come from membership, right? It does come from classes and everything else, or is that not?
What do you mean?
Their advocacy, they pay 2 lobbyists, they used to pay 3. They pay 2 lobbyists, like $110,000. I think that's what they reported at least a couple years ago on their tax forms. So is that how they're funding their lobbyists is not just through our membership, it's through conferences, like our Capitol Conference and all of that as well,
Their
isn't
total
it?
budget.
I've never looked at their budget, so I have
Okay.
no idea.
Yeah,
Couldn't even answer it. Could be honest, could care less.
okay.
But
So-
I think the important part is if you have a concern about us being members and the amount of money that our taxpayer dollars are paid in dues to OSBA, we're talking about $125 of that going to an advocacy initiative. So it would be very small based on the other things we do benefit from, such as a discounted price for board docs and other value, like their legal line, I think is very valuable.
I've called it.
Yeah, because that's really if you're members.
I have to say the legislative advocacy too, I think is a great value. To your point, 2 to 3, two people that they're hiring to advocate preserves $600 million in capital funding for public schools. So as a public school and as a representative of public schools, we want funding for public schools because it improves public schools that we all benefit from. If your child goes to public schools or not, if you have children or not, you benefit from having a strong public school in your community. You just do. It raises your home value. It's a benefit to your community when you have educated citizens. So advocating for public schools is something that I feel we should want.
Do you feel like they were out of line in sending their email to anybody who's a part of OSBA, including administrative folks and board members, and asking them to contact their state legislator to oppose the Parents' Bill of Rights and specifically the religious time release? Do you feel like that was out of line? Because that's not really public schools. That's a personal position that they hold. I'm asking Maggie for now. So, do you feel like that's in alignment?
I
with
wasn't
public
aware
school?
that they sent that to everyone.
Did you get the email?
Yes,
Right.
but I'm an OSBA member, so.
Yeah, it was sent to. I mean, you guys received it as well, right? Because it said it was sent to administrators as well.
Yeah, but I don't, yes, to answer your question, yes.
So and do you feel like that's out of line for them to use their lobbying efforts in that way?
To send an email to talk about bills that they feel are harmful to public schools?
Do you feel like that's harmful to public schools? Do you feel like that's in alignment of a stance that we should take? Because that's the issue I have. We're allowing our funds to go towards an organization that's a 501c4 that does have a political lobbying effort. And it goes well beyond even just the tax dollars that we give them, because they do contact anybody who's a part of OSBA and say, hey, here's a bill, contact your state senators and say, or reps and say, don't support this because of X, Y, and Z. And I feel like that is so far out of line of what, we should be supporting, because we have parents who do support the Parents' Bill of Rights. We have community members who pay taxes that supported the Parents' Bill of Rights, and the religious
Sure.
time release. So,
Sure.
and I obviously, speaking to social media, I shared that email on my social media, and I did get a call from Kathy. She runs OSBA. I've spoken to her a couple times. We had a very good conversation, but she understood that my position on how this doesn't look good. And she was under the assumption from our conversation that most schools would allow for religious time release. Well, we just talked about how we didn't want to do it unless the state was doing it. So I explained to her that that's not the case for every school.
Mhm.
And we had a very good conversation, but she understood why I couldn't support OSBA, even though I don't have a problem with people going to training as they see fit.
Sure.
I do take issue though with, Ginny, you said, it's a very small fee. Well, I hate to bring this up again, but a few years ago, you and Maggie and Mary Briner didn't agree with my $40 reimbursement for the class that I wanted to go to with the National School Board Leadership Council. And I know, Maggie, you had said last year that you felt like it was anti-public education, which I learned so much from that class. It was only $40, and I ended up having to pay for it out of my own pocket because you guys wouldn't reimburse me on that because you felt like it was too political and anti-public education. But here you are supporting more dollars going to something that I feel like they have taken a stance against parental rights. And that, OSBA, let's talk about OSBA Capital Conference. They had classes that I vehemently disagreed with, right? They had classes that I did agree with. I feel as board members we should be able to go to, whatever classes we see fit. And that's, NSBLC had classes that I agreed with and classes that I didn't agree with, just like OSBA. I didn't get reimbursed the $40 because, you guys felt like it was too anti-public education is exactly what you said last year, so I'm assuming that's the reason. But I learned so much, and I was able to speak up about the rights of our citizens when they're at the mic because of things I learned there. And I did prevent, with saying, we need to contact the lawyer for this, we need to we can't shut somebody's speech down for that, we can't censor what they're saying. So I learned a lot. I learned about safety, I learned a couple things that I think you brought up. I said, I learned about that too at the NSBLC. So I just find it odd that we take a position on $40, but then when we've spent almost $30,000 with OSBA, we're not going to take that same position. So
I was looking at the fact that more than 95% of eligible entities, it's more than 700 school districts, ESCs, and all the rest all belong to OSBA. So as an aggregate, that group is who creates the planks of the platform that they advocate for. So OSBA is reflecting what the membership has agreed to.
And we have a say in that too.
Correct. And I know that we disagreed on that, bless you,
Bless
you.
the parental rights, the all was the word that was the stumbling block, and that led to that very long session at OSBA when Tom went 2 years ago. and the group decided no. So OSBA is a reflection of that common wisdom of 700 and some entities. And there may be things that any of us disagrees with in specific, but it's the best representation of the common wisdom of all.
Right.
So,
I want to, if I
Go ahead.
So right, just to reiterate that, we do actually have a say in that legislative platform. We get to vote, and we were outvoted on at least one of the issues that I went and represented us. We all agreed here what we were going to support or not support, and then I go and I make that vote on our behalf. And
because the charge for
right,
public records.
right. So we were outvoted. Yet again, that's what it is when you're a member and part of a membership. I mean, that's, we were not, and that's how democracy works. You're just majority rules. So a couple things in addition to that, because we have a direct say in what goes on that platform, but also the email that they sent out about House Bill 8, Parents' Bill of Rights, I'm looking at it right now, and the issue they had with it was that it removed local control of school boards. And it does. I mean, it removes the control of us to make decisions about what we want to happen in our district. And that is in their legislative platform, so it only made sense. I understood why they were sending out that email, because it goes against the agreed upon, voted upon legislative platform, that particular plank, that local control that school boards, they believe, that we, again, as members of the organization collectively believe should be taking place, and House Bill 8 does not allow for that. So I understood why they were sending it out. I do want to say I've really enjoyed being a member of OSBA. I've learned a ton. Their legislative reports and updates do make up a lot of my report. I go to different sources to kind of cull together all different perspectives, but it's far and away the most comprehensive source on the numerous education bills. I mean, there are so many, hundreds, in any one General Assembly. So having their expertise on those has been crucial for me as the legislative liaison. So I'll say that. The orientation that we enjoyed at the beginning of my tenure, the Capitol Conference, first time I got to go, I found it wonderful. I got to meet all sorts of folks who served on other boards, even some Mentor alums, which was really cool. I learned a lot. I don't always agree with everything they say, absolutely, but I think with a membership organization, that's par for the course. I mean, there were lots of planks in that platform. I sat through that session during the conference that we voted on, and I don't agree with every single one. We lost, like I said, on that public charge, or the charge for public records. I still generally support, what they stand for. And I will point out that you two also, use taxpayer money to attend the conference. I believe this is the third one you've attended, Mrs. Payne. So it seems strange, odd, I think was your word, that you would utilize hundreds of dollars of public taxpayer money to attend the conference of the organization you're saying that you're taking a stand against. So that seems odd to me. At any rate, I wholeheartedly support the membership. I love what they do. Don't agree with every single little thing, but on the whole, I find them supportive, again, of public education. I'm all for it.
I'm once again, like last year, again, I've sung praises for a lot of what OSBA does. My issue is the lobbying part, and 2 to 3%. If you ask taxpayers who did not vote for the levy, and you ask them if they think it's okay just for 2 to 3%, they're gonna. It doesn't matter when you have principles. You don't want your money going towards something that is advocating against you, especially with this House Bill 8. That was a direct. That email really kind of. I was already not supporting it because I don't believe that you should use taxpayer dollars to lobby. I agree that they could take their own portion, use a separate portion of money, raise money. I don't care if that's what they want to do for public education, but not everybody agrees that parental rights and some of the things in House Bill 8 goes against public education. I think you can have both, and a lot of districts are finally speaking up. I think one of the biggest, Southwest, 22,000
they have
students.
22,000.
They didn't even put it on their agenda this year because they want to send a message to OSBA. You've got a lot of great things, but you're there's talk in the State House that about a bill to prevent taxpayer dollars to go to lobbyists because people care about some of these you can support public education like we do and not bow to the altar of it and it have to be one way. There's nothing in the House Bill 8 that is, I think, egregious when it comes to the parental rights aspect of it. And for OSBA to say, call reach out to your legislators and tell them to vote against it. I mean, they actually took a step back and sent an additional email because they kind of realized, like, oh, people are looking at it as we don't support parental rights, which they didn't. So, I have standards, and you can say that we're hypocrites because we took taxpayer dollars. I can't even tell you how many hours I put into this position, and it's available for us to.
But you're arguing about taxpayer dollars being spent, but you use taxpayer dollars to go to the conference.
Exactly, because we're members. If you didn't vote,
Right.
the majority
Okay,
voted
I thought
for us to go.
principals or whatever, but I guess not.
I feel like you're doing a personal attack.
Right,
on us
I
now.
don't think you're making, the point you think you're making.
Yeah.
I think I just did, and I'll say no
No,
more.
I don't think you're making the point you're making. Because I do think that they have a lot to offer, and you guys voted for that. I wouldn't have argued to try and go to it last year if we didn't do it. We weren't members.
Yeah.
So why would I not take advantage of that, right? Should I have not gone?
Well, you said principals and $125.
Principals for other
and-
yes, and other people's money.
Okay,
We're talking about
I'll
other
say no
people's
more.
money. Okay. There's just not enough of, we're about to ask the taxpayers for more money, and nobody seems, in any decisions, even meetings, seems to look into what the taxpayers want. I hope that, obviously we're going to get outvoted, but a lot of districts are setting the message to OSBA that please be more neutral.
Little Miami just pulled out as well, by Warren. They have 5,200 students.
Okay, so, listen, it may not seem like a big enough thing for you guys, but I know that if you want to talk to taxpayers who are voted against the levy and are not happy, that's going to matter to them. You saying it's only 2 and 3% of your money, that every dollar that people, their hard-earned money, they want it to go to something that's meaningful, and going against parental rights, that alone,
Again, in their
can't do it.
email, it was the local control of the school board that
Okay,
they took
but
issue
here's the
with,
thing.
which is in their legislative
Right,
platform.
but this is why House Bill 8 passed. Because right now, we are looking at another year of our board making decisions that do not represent the majority of voters. And so this bill, the legislators had to step in because school boards are not making decisions that reflect the voters. So that's why the legislators had to step in. So to answer that, that's why we don't want to keep it at local control because we're not listening to our taxpayers. So that's my.
And I think the prime example of that would be the sexual content policy that
Yeah.
passed 5-0, a year ago or whenever, to flag, books that had sexual content or were graphically sexually explicit. And, we rescinded it 3-2 recently. And so the state has stepped in and said, no, we do have standards. And the standards should be that you need to let parents know, every parent, regardless of if they want to know or not, and flag books that do have sexual content in them. So I think that's a good example
I think
of.
this is a bit off topic.
See, I'm still talking. It is.
Sure.
It is
Sorry.
on topic. So I do think that OSBA lobbying for things that could be against parents' rights. I don't think it's right. I think it sends a message to the community. When we pulled out of the National School Board Association, we didn't renew with them because of their anti-parent statement saying that parents were terrorists because of them speaking up at board meetings about not wanting their kids in masks. So along those same lines, they have come out publicly, well, at least to people that they sent emails to, with a stance against Parents' Bill of Rights. Now specifically, I believe it was the religious time release because of the local control piece, which is in their lobbying platform. And when I had talked to Kathy, I said, well, I have a problem in general with your lobbying platform. I don't care what's in it and what's not in it, we shouldn't have one, because that's using public tax dollars for lobbying purposes, and I don't think that's their role, as long as we're providing them funds, so.
Is there any more discussion?
Who motioned?
It was one of us.
it's.
I think
yeah,
I motioned
I think
first.
Mrs. Marchaz.
Yes.
Ms.
I don't
Jessling
know.
seconded?
I believe so.
Did you
All
second?
right, we'll have to look at the video.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain it was.
I think I motioned to approve. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we are voting, to be clear,
9
on
and
both
10.
approval of membership to the Ohio School Boards Association and the Legal Assistance Fund.
Correct.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Marchaza?
Yes.
Ms. Jessling?
Yes.
Ms. Iapolo?
No.
Ms. Payne?
No.
Ms. Cook?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
Next, we have approval of agenda items 11 through 25. Does anyone want me to read them?
Can we have just discussion? I had a couple questions.
Absolutely.
Um,
So
Should we
so let's have a
motion and
motion
second
first.
first?
and-
Yes.
Okay, so a motion to approve items 11 through 25
Second.
and discussion.
12, providing for employment of legal counsel for the Board of Education. I know we've talked a lot about saving money. I did some research as well, and it seems like our legal, who provides our legal services is one of the more expensive options. I didn't know, and I'm not saying we need to switch, I'm just saying, have we looked into benchmarking it and seeing what it is compared to other firms? And, I'm not saying I'm not happy with them, but I just think in the, if we're talking about saving money, I know that there's a big difference in some of the other attorney fees.
So how did you look at those numbers, like what
I just
other
asked
districts are?
some of the folks in the OSBCC and what their,
Like what their
districts are.
yearly bill
Like-
is, or
like
like
the-
their hourly, or?
The hourly, yeah. So
Their
I think we
hourly.
pay like 300 and, I don't know, 50, is it?
Uh,
375?
I'd have to look to confirm. I'd be hate to say without knowing for sure, but I thought it was 325, but it could
Okay.
be 350, but I'd have to double check.
So just something, I don't know if we can look into, in the future, just making sure that our cost is, I know we're a larger district, so we'd want to benchmark with larger districts, just to see.
So what I can do is I'll ask other districts who they're using and reach out to them and see what their hourly rate is for
Just to
the
see, yeah.
Would
provider
you
report.
mind when you do that, and no rush, but I would like to see our legal expenses over the last year. Are you able to pull that report?
That's, yeah, yep.
Thank you.
It's very easy.
Just the prior year? Because
I mean, I've seen the numbers from the last few years, like since
Mhm.
21. I guess, yeah, if you wanna make
And-
it the last 3 to 4,
I'll
And
do
can you-
5.
that sounds great.
Can you break them down? Because I know when we were doing a superintendent search, we used our legal a lot for that. So I didn't know if you had that, had that ability, because there is a difference between us talking to Eric and us using him for a superintendent search, like that kind of stuff, or if we're calling him
No.
for contracts.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
not.
no way to, so we can't really substantiate. I think
Well,
what
we
you're
know-
going for that is how much have we spent? I know that's what you're going for. So how much have we spent versus like everybody using it as a board? Because you guys do weekly calls as well, right, with Eric?
Yep.
And then we also have one-off situations where we may not be aware of it because it could be a bullying situation or some other situation where Craig has to go directly and we're not aware of it.
Sure, or an administrator.
Or administrator.
might need
So if there's no
some
way to
kind of
break it down, we
counsel.
can't really
Well,
substantiate.
we get bills that break it down by topic. I mean, when we have it, so that's the way we can
That'd be
So
great.
check.
could we,
That'd be great.
So you wanna see all those,
I'd like that, yeah.
yeah, well,
okay?
And no rush. Absolutely no rush.
so topic would be superintendent search or something like that, right?
No, I gotta check because there's it gets into details like Title IX investigation
Sure.
on such student.
Okay.
Would he
so
have
because,
that? Like when he tracks billable, is he
Because,
able to?
well, they do. They give us a bill that says a quarter hour for this.
Mhm.
Right.
So it's just us for this.
Mhm.
And some of that stuff is FERPA protected because it's
Sure.
regarding specific students.
Hmm.
I think what
So-
Lauren's getting at specifically, she probably wants to know how much Rose and I have spent. Let's just be honest. You want to know how much we've spent on the attorney to contact him in regards
Wow.
to.
I speak for myself, but I really
Let's see.
genuinely would like to know what our legal costs have looked like over the years. If we're going on this, we're having you go out and explore cost comparisons and such. I think it would be helpful to know, because I know there's been some deviation from the norm, which is to work through the president and the superintendent when contacting the attorney but there's deviation from that norm. And I know that racks up the legal bills, and so I'm curious to know what that looks like.
So can you get that information for her, of specifically Rose and I?
I will begin to work on that, yeah.
Thank you.
That's gonna be a very time-consuming task.
I don't need you to do it, but apparently Ms. Marchaza would like to
I think
have
it's
that.
important for us to know. I mean, I think it's important for us, if we're going to deviate from norms, are they costly to the taxpayers? And
I
certainly-
think,
Hmm.
well, I appreciate what you're saying. I think it's more important for the board to look at it from a macro scale
Mhm.
and look at our costs as a whole.
Mhm.
And then, you know, if we wanted to dig into ways to reduce those costs, it could be. I can tell you from the 4 years that I've sat as the
Mhm.
CFO in this district, the costs have been higher than they were prior because of the amount of times that we have to get into disputes as a group of policy or things that we have
Mhm.
to call Eric on and get a second check before we can do those types of things. So I would say in totality, as a whole, as a group, the costs have been increased
Mhm.
for that.
Would you
There
s-
is their increased cost as well because members have questions and they want to reach out to legal as well.
Mhm.
We've went on record of saying a number of times that we'd like to have a protocol for that.
Yes.
To help reduce those costs. But
Mhm.
costs over the last, since COVID, we talked a lot today about since COVID has happened, things have gone up and legal fees have been because of the number of things that we have to bring before them to make sure that our interpretation is what, you know, that's being questioned. A lot of times, are we doing the right thing? Is the right thing and does align to policy? So we have this, you know, then the only person that we can then ask would be legal.
Mhm.
So to do that and to confirm that we are doing what's right and appropriate, then costs additional costs.
And a few times it's been shown that we weren't, because one of the meetings that we had, our special meeting, we had individuals from the audience recording, and we almost called the police in to take that individual out for recording. And I said, I think you need to talk to Eric on that. And we found out that our policy, we ended up changing our policy to align with the law, which said we had to allow. So, and we actually, that was one of the meetings with our OSBA representative, Cheryl.
Yep.
And actually OSBA as well has a document about that, how you have to let people record. You cannot, that's a freedom of speech type of thing.
I
so.
think that must have been before my time, but 'cause I don't
It
remember.
was, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm more interested in like, how do we streamline and maybe adhere better to board norms to save on the bottom line. That's what I'm after, right? I think it's no secret that you two contact the attorney quite frequently, or at least.
Oh, I wouldn't say frequently.
Yeah.
Well, I get a lot of emails from him saying Annie asked about this, Rose asked about that, and
No, that's not frequently.
okay, well, at any,
Twice in the last
that's
2
what I want to
months.
know. That's all I want to know,
Oh,
right?
so it was what I said was exactly what you wanted to know.
I didn't deny it. I didn't deny it. I
Okay.
simply said I can speak for myself. And so ultimately my goal is to understand, is this hitting our bottom line? Is there anything we can do about it? Can we board norm something and adhere to practice that would ultimately save us money? However you want to figure that out.
So,
no.
just to be clear, the board wants me to look at legal costs and breaking that down.
Not necessarily. If you think you could give me an answer to that question, to those questions I just posed, without doing that, I trust you.
In a board norm, you're talking about a bylaw that would require a 2/3
A norm
vote?
is not a bylaw.
Right, so we don't have
So
to.
we
You don't have to, absolutely
Right.
not. No, you could say, I mean, you
Right.
have done that all this past year with this
Rightfully so,
particular
yeah.
norm.
Rightfully
So, but if it saves us money on our bottom, that's what I'm after. Like, what, could this net us something in the positive? Could this help us?
So since we're so worried about saving money, I think we do need a benchmark though and see how much other districts are spending per hour for their attorneys.
I think that's a good point. Let's just find a benchmark about the hour, but, you know, to the point about a bylaw, I don't know if that's the answer. I don't think that we want to make it so that people can't ask questions to our lawyer, but maybe having a bylaw that has a system would be worth it. You know, just a process that we would use
Just
would be.
I mean, it would have to be something that we agree on though, because it has to be a 2/3 vote to pass a bylaw.
Oh,
So you would need a
I'm
4/5.
I'm not trying
4 out
to
of 5.
be adversarial when I'm talking. I'm just telling you that maybe a system would be helpful to us. You know, and that's something that I have asked before. Right now we don't have any policy that talks about any access to our legal team, you know, even for like our administrators. So our administrators just follow the process, that if they feel that there's something that needs to go through legal, they go to our, our two head administrators and they go through it. But what would stop them from calling continuously if they had questions?
Well, it's a board attorney though, so that's an important, point.
Well,
that
that's-
we don't
it's
follow
a-
the same thing as them, and generally, we do direct questions where it needs to be, and we've used that when we didn't feel, either we didn't get answers or we didn't.
Well, board attorney means for the Board of Education, like for the district,
I know.
not like
But-
specifically for the board member's attorney. So.
He's the attorney for the entire district,
He's the
right?
attorney for the district. So when a principal has a question, they also tap into that, but they go through
Right. Right.
other people. They,
Right, but we
and
don't follow the same thing as all the other administrators.
Because there's a
board.
hierarchy
I don't,
and
we
we
don't,
are-
we don't, right,
the
we don't,
board
that's why
is
there's no
over.
law or policy or bylaw that says we have to go through them. We should, and at every point where it makes sense, we try to do that, so.
yeah,
but
I'm
we've
just
gotten
suggesting maybe we consider it something that we would all agree on.
I would love to
Just-
feel confident and
Yeah.
just go follow that way, but I
Okay.
don't at this point.
Okay.
I agree.
So we were talking about, my goodness.
We were on 12.
Do you have clarification of the question that you're asking?
I do.
If they, okay. All right, so do we have, so there was discussion on 12. Did we have enough discussion on 12? Is there any other discussion on items 9 through 25?
Oh, I did on 14, establishing class fees. How do we, who determines that, and how do we?
I asked you to
Yeah. We work with our principals to get those established. Also, our curriculum department is part of that. Mr. Hammond helps coordinate, especially at the elementary K-8 level, what those class fees are. We work with Jason Crow on the student fees for the high school, and we bring those to the board on an annual basis. So, again, this is just authorizing me to be able to help establish those fees based on their input.
So it will be at the table.
Mhm.
The fees will be at the table at a future meeting.
And they have to equal the costs associated with the perishable. So
The consumable items.
yeah, so like for food, foods, they figure out, hey, if I have 25 kids and we're making cakes, I know I'm gonna need this much batter, this much eggs. So this is what it's gonna be. So then they divide that over the number of kids that they have, and that's how they kind of create that. So like if I know I got 120 kids and the workbooks are, $10, I gotta charge each kid $10.
Is there any more discussion?
For 19, who is our grant writer? Or do we have several? I remember asking this before.
Yeah, we actually do have several.
Okay.
Obviously, a lot of the grants that we've got here recently have been around CTE funds. Joe Glavin works on a lot of those. When we're looking at some of our federal funds, things that are in the CCIP, Barb Bonas and Carrie Bowser typically are working through the majority of those. So those are some of those grant-funded programs. I've done a couple from the school safety standpoint. So when we write those grants to try and, like when we did the radios here recently, that was under Mr. Porter's lead that first year that I was superintendent when he was the director of safety. So he wrote that one. So again, whoever has something that's out there that might oversee that particular item, that's who typically will write those grants.
And do they
for us.
have, how do we get notified about it? Because I know the one time we accidentally missed one of the safety ones, but, so what is the process of being notified about a grant? Do we have somebody overlooking and looking at all of them and saying, this one should go to this person to write it and this one, or?
No, and a lot of it just depends on how we get those notifications. And there are some that we weren't notified that they were even out there. Dr. Glavin, because his focus is on CTE,
Right.
he's always tapping into his resources there too. I think that'll be the important thing for us moving forward on the safety side of things too, having our new director of safety and transportation to be
Yeah.
able to be
Keep an
that
eye.
point person for us moving forward too.
So to be clear, there is no full-time grant writer, part-time grant writer on staff?
No, it's by committee.
It's people, yeah, right, doing two
pretty
jobs.
common, yeah.
Right,
It's-
and that's common for other districts as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've been in a district, even some of the larger districts down in central Ohio that actually had a
I've never
grant
heard of that
writer.
either.
We looked
There
into
was
it. I
some-
looked into it at Kirtland, and the people that you would have do it want a part of the grant
Yeah,
Oh,
too.
interesting.
Like it's
That's
like
right.
that's what they do. There's like
Yes.
a percentage. They like, oh, if you get this grant, we get a percentage of that grant. That's how you compensate us, and
Oh,
then they
sure,
write that
sure,
into
sure.
the grant.
I see.
Yes.
So we kind of got away from that.
Yeah,
From
makes
past,
sense.
just small district too, right? It's even
Mhm.
harder because.
Isn't that what
everyone-
happened in Youngstown? Like by
Oh.
Youngstown at Girard, there was like that CFO, I think.
No, no,
or
that was.
superintendent. What was that?
Okay, that's.
Or is that something different?
Is
Is that different?
It is different. And
Oh,
I'll
wasn't
explain
it
it since you
grant
asked.
something?
He wrote, board approved
Yes,
into the contract that he got a percentage
of all the
of
grants.
certain things, yes.
Yeah, and he ended up getting tons of money.
He made a pretty good
Yeah,
paycheck
so
that year, but now he's, I think.
Yeah, now he's in trouble, so yeah.
No, he's not in trouble, he's
No,
just
but he's just
unemployed.
got, yeah.
Yeah.
That just
Well-
that just rang a bell.
To
when
be
you
clear,
said
I
that.
have nothing like that in my contract.
No. That's why it's so
But you
important
would
to
like
look over them.
You've been saving money.
If we keep on having 2-hour organizational meetings, I'll be returning my contract.
Yeah, sorry about that. I did ask about our grant allocations, and for fiscal year 2024, we had $5,101,963.76.
Pretty good for no full-time grant writer on
I
staff.
know,
Yeah.
I know. What a great-
Sitting in a building that was filled with the 2 people who are not grant writers.
And fiscal year 2025 is $3,147,713.94. So we're definitely
yeah.
currently, yeah, not complete yet.
Halfway through.
So definitely seeking other sources of revenue to offset costs, and that's fantastic. Okay, is there any more discussion? Items 11 through 25. All right, please call the roll.
Miss Iapolo,
Yes.
Miss Jessling,
Yes.
Miss Cook,
Yes.
Miss Marchaza.
Yes.
Miss Payne.
Yes.
Motion's carried 5-0.
Okay, next we have the superintendent's report and recommendations.
All right, I'll make this quick. It looks like we changed one thing from last year to this year with Mentor Schools Foundation going from Ginny to Lauren. My recommendation would be we keep the curriculum liaison, school safety liaisons the same.
You would say who those are for the minutes?
Yeah, just to, again, try and maintain the balance as we're going through. So that would be Ms. Jessling and Mrs. Iapolo for curriculum if you are still interested. And that would be Mrs. Payne and Mrs. Cook for school safety if you're still interested.
Yes, thank you.
And I think that will allow us to continue some of the good work we've got going on with both curriculum and school safety right now.
Thank you for keeping the balance in those positions.
Absolutely.
Okay, finally, we have the Board of Education report and recommendations with a first reading of the Neola Board of Education policies, and because this is a first reading, no vote is necessary. Is there
Can we have
any-
discussion on it?
Can I point out one thing before we have discussion?
Yes.
Mhm.
They just released a special release today for vendor relations because of Senate Bill 29 update that came out. So there's minor changes that I'll put in my Friday update that relate to that change. So it's going to be the second reading, just to be preemptive so you're aware, will be slightly different than what you have in front of you for the first reading because of the fact there was an update that just came out today.
For the vendors.
Yes,
Okay.
first, that's policy 6460.
Thank
And in
you.
the document that I sent you that has the Google Docs, I've added that, struck out the one above it, and put the new one in bold below.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Just so you're clear.
And you're recommending that we go along with those changes?
Yeah.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I do, yeah, I had a couple things. I just kind of want to, I know I brought this up before, but I need to bring it up again because I see that they're still making these changes. 1 minute here. Okay.
The pronouns.
So, yeah, the pronoun changes, they're taking, he and she, or him and her, and slashing it out and putting their instead. When I had reached out to Craig last year, he did ask them why they were doing it, and they came back and said, there's no legal requirement, only standardizing the language as districts try to be more inclusive. I believe the revisions make it easier to read, but it's a district decision. Then they said some districts have decided not to make the pronoun changes. If you wish to remove the pronoun changes, simply right-click on the revision and reject the change. So I guess I have something to say about that, but I also wanted to ask, Craig, are you recommending those changes to us, or
These are all mine.
are you recommending the change of the pronouns to us?
I'm just gonna be honest, I was being lazy and didn't really care either way what it said, because
Okay.
sometimes they wrote it out or sometimes they did it, so I have no preference because
Okay.
I don't really like to write his, her anyways when I do it, because it just becomes cumbersome, because I remember the day when we just wrote his. So, and then that wasn't appropriate, so we do his, her, and now they changed it to their, they do it. I don't have a preference either way. Again, I serve at the pleasure of the board. I'm more worried about what's the meat and potatoes of the policy.
Okay. So my concerns are we're making, knowing what their reason was to be more inclusive. I don't understand what is not inclusive by using she and he or him and her. Like, I don't get, unless we believe as a whole, collectively, there's more than two genders, which is, we're teaching correct pronoun usage. It's a state standard for first grade. I don't think our policies should not align with that. I just take issue. I know Riverside, even before their board switched, they decided not to do these changes. I know North Royalton, I believe, is also one that decided not to make these changes. A lot of people keep Neola, but didn't make the pronoun changes because they felt with their explanation that it was more of a political stance, not truly, a necessary change, which they said isn't necessary. So I don't agree. I think that there are, he and she covers everything. I don't understand what we're missing. Like, what is not inclusive of he and she? Can somebody explain like what gender is not being included with that?
Well,
I'm asking the board.
can I just make a point though?
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt, but like, for example, because these are mine, and I went through this, I actually had notes. I said, I bet this is going to be an issue. Like in the oath of office one, they wrote out his, her. Like, so it's not, that one wasn't even a gender one, right? Like it said each member of the board before entering the duties of office. Because it used to say his, her office. It's really not, it's the office doesn't have a sexuality, so it really shouldn't have been his, her to begin with. So like that one I didn't have.
That one's,
So-
those kind of ones I'm fine with. It's the
I know
ones that
the
are
other ones
she,
where they
he,
said, where they said
and
there, I
replace
get
them with
that, but
their.
like there, I want to make sure that we realize that some of them, they
Don't
tried
say
to
exactly
write,
that, yeah.
just write it out, like, so
Yeah,
it's not even.
I see
a-
what you're saying. Yeah, and that some of them make sense,
And,
but like
and I
the
think
she.
that when we talked about that before too, and instead of using the word there, we were just changing it back to what the actual noun was that the pronoun was referring
Fool
to.
me.
He
Sorry.
said that, I heard him say it a couple of times.
I
I
mean, the
just
way I
don't-
feel about it is one way to look at it is you're taking a political stance about gender. But another way to look at it is it's a way for clarity and more professional writing. And that's really how journals write and how professionals write. They don't use he, her. They talk about what it's in reference to, like we talked about, or they use they, their, and it has nothing to do with gender ideology. So I think that there is one way to look at it and say we're making this political, but the other way is just like, I'm just making it clear. And that's why I stand with making this policy changing it to the way that they're saying, not because I'm making a political stance, but because I just think it's more clear. I think the language is more clear that way. So that's why my vote would be to make it using professional language.
But what they said in an email was not to be professional. It was there is no legal requirement, only standardizing the language as districts try to be more inclusive. So what are we
That may be
trying to
so,
be
but
more-
my vote would be because it's more clear and it would follow journalistic.
So you believe there's still only two genders, you're not trying to include other
I'm
ones
not
than he
taking
or
a
she?
political stance on that with this. I'm just saying that I feel that it makes it more clear. That's where I'm standing.
Yeah, I agree. As a professional writer, I'm an editor. I work for a university. We use AP Style. I've also used Chicago. I've used APA. I mean, like, all of the standards of writing have moved into this kind of language mostly for clarity. Some say it's for inclusiveness. You know, I can tell you though, from a professional perspective, this is pretty standard.
You work for a very liberal university, so I'm not surprised to hear that. But I think when it makes sense, what you're saying, there are things, like to say the office. But, I mean, are we erasing his, her? Like, that just seems, just because that's the new way that a lot of people are doing it, I think we're gonna see it going back the other way. I just think it's silly that
I was
we're
always
contradicting
fine
our.
with his. I just always
Yeah.
thought, no, I mean, seriously,
Because
when
we
I.
know what it means,
'cause-
it's not to be hurtful,
Well,
right?
no, it
Right.
was like the world of mankind, you know, the
Yeah.
male pronoun was simpler, and so when it got to this cumbersome his/her, I go, for Pete's sake. And I always, when I'm looking at writing for myself, I want clean and clear.
Mhm.
So when, yeah, oh, for Pete's sake. So I like the idea of using the noun. Anything new that we're going to get, brand new policies aren't gonna have those cumbersome pieces and parts. It doesn't particularly make a difference to me so long as the quality and clarity of the writing sounds clean and professional.
And let's not forget, language changes.
It does.
Generationally, even from decade to decade. I mean,
Drop the eon old.
the dictionary is always being edited, right? Like, just language changes, that happens. It doesn't look the same as it did 100 years ago for all sorts of reasons, whether we like it or not.
And my understanding was, as this was just moving through with rewrites of individual policies, we're just cleaning it up as part of the process. It wasn't, there was.
It was like a wholesale, like, we need to
Yeah.
change all of the,
No,
yeah,
just
I know
if
what
we
you're
get
saying.
to
I
it
know
and
what you're
it's
saying.
in there,
Yeah.
we'll switch it out, so.
Well, that's not what they said, though. I mean, they said that it's literally, they did this to be more inclusive. So I can't put my name with something to be more inclusive and basically say that there's more than two genders when
That's not
my
what that's
conscience.
saying.
It is. And what are we trying to be more inclusive to then?
Well, the fact that there was his and her.
What is not
was-
inclusive with his and her?
That was the inclusive part in the old method. And I just always
Yeah.
thought it was,
No, they're saying, this is
Ridiculous.
from Neola.
Yeah, this is from Dr.
Explaining
Holland.
the change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Specific
I did not
to the
read
he and she.
his statement. I'm just looking at it from.
Well, I just read it to you. There's no
I
legal.
no,
I got it from
understand.
Craig.
I'm not disputing that, but I don't think it makes any huge difference. I just want it simple, clean and simple.
And in addition to that, not that I don't think you can hold the Bible wonderfully, but I don't like that saying we have to have our treasurer. I think it was
Oh, no.
special that I was able to have my dad,
Yeah.
swear me in, or if somebody has a judge or a relationship, or if they choose our CFO. But I have. Does everybody feel like that? Do you agree with that?
You're
those
talking about the
changes?
bylaw
We
for the
changed
oath.
subjects. You lost me for a
Yeah,
second, but I
wait.
picked up
Bylaw
on
for
it.
the
Sorry,
oath.
I'm sorry. I was
For
on
the
that topic of
swearing
the
in.
oath, but I was
Yeah.
looking at the oath. But
It
it
used
says-
to be sort of a hassle because we used to use the judge and then whether he was available and who was gonna do it. So I think having the treasurer do it as our compliance officer is perfectly fine, and then you can invite any guest you wish.
I mean, we made the adjustment, right? I mean, that wasn't an issue in your.
Well, 'cause
I
it wasn't
think
in
what
a
she's
bylaw.
saying
This
is
is the
now.
This is a
change, but they
bylaw.
wanna change it and
No,
say
it was.
only.
It was.
I thought it
It was
was, yeah.
originally the same thing, I believe, in the
Right.
old policy.
Then what are they trying to change?
Yeah, we weren't changing that. That was just, there are certain things, this is a good talking point.
It's in
There are
here.
certain things that they leave open, and I just looked at our old policy that we had adopted back in August and put in what we had. So certain things may look like it's a change. It's not really a change. It's just me putting in what was in the old policy.
So,
So it's under green. It shouldn't be in green then?
But I had to add it because Neola doesn't know what we had in our other policy.
So we
They
just-
left it to
So
choice.
you're recommending leaving it so we have the option?
no,
No,
this
no, no.
says, this takes away.
This takes it
So,
away.
when Neola gives us templates,
Mm-hmm.
they have their red and green line edits for their general policies. We've already adopted a policy. We had something in place in certain spots that they had a blank because they don't know what we had in that spot. Does that make sense? So in this case, it could have, it might have said superintendent in other districts. It may say the judge in other districts. Ours was treasurer, so when I put treasurer in, that was just me putting in what was already there. So it shows up as a edit because it's not in their
Because it's
model
ours.
policy
Right.
that they're sending us.
But that's not in our current policy. Our current bylaw states each member of the board shall, before entering, take an oath of office, and it says nothing about who swears them in. So it is addition. You are making a change.
I'd
Look
have
on policy manual under policy 0142.1.
Yeah.
So it is new. So in order for it to only be the treasurer, then the bylaw would have to
What-
pass.
Which policy?
Oath. So we do not have it in there right now. So it's not.
Well, my apologies then.
Could you give me that number real quick?
It's 0142.1.
The current policy reads, each member of the board shall, before entering his duties, take an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, faith and reform.
So I would agree with Rose. I don't think we should change it. I think it was wonderful that your dad was able to come in, and how special that is. I know it's special when, Maggie got to sign the diploma for her child, and hopefully down the road you'll be able to do it for.
Oh, I
them.
did,
So-
yeah, see that, this
Yeah.
is, I apologize, let me correct myself. This was me checking that X, because that's what we had done. So, that does not need to be checked. If that's what the board wishes.
I don't
I
have
am
any preferences.
completely in support of
Yeah.
keeping it
And
the
I don't
same. I
really
think it's
need to be the one
lovely.
holding the Bible.
Unless you have some really.
I don't know.
And we can always use Mr.
You're-
Wade.
I could be
We
the
could
de
use
facto
whoever we wish.
Bible holder,
Yes.
good Catholic school boy that I am.
I have no problem keeping it. I thought it was very nice, so.
Alright, so I'll take that out.
Any more discussion?
My apologies. But my fact about the fact there are going to be things that you read in there, that there are going to be
That
green
was right.
lines,
Yeah.
is actual.
Okay.
For 6220, you put on there real bold, you don't recommend the changes. What was the difference between what they were changing and what we
yeah.
have?
They added a policy that we already have to that policy. So we already have a cash reserve policy
Okay,
on the books. So I didn't feel the need to
it was redundant.
use theirs.
Okay.
I didn't like, to be honest, I didn't really like their
Big
cash reserve
initiative.
policy.
Okay.
So I liked ours better and what we
How
have.
was it different? What was ours versus that?
Ours is a little more specific and it kind of meets our needs and what we've been doing.
And how you can use it, doesn't it delineate,
Yeah, I think it's more detailed and it better fits what we're trying to do. Ours talks to that, 5% reserve that you have to, that we can't do anything with. And then it talks to the fact that we're gonna have additional 10% on top of that to make sure that, to help guide us on what we think an appropriate minimum cash balance is. Everything else in that policy though, the upper part of that was the same.
Okay.
So my rationale on that one was to make sure that we didn't be redundant and do that as well. And I just want to point out that you should have seen the strike-throughs on policy 1065.1, 0165.2, because we are going to be rescinding those.
Can you say that again?
We are rescinding policies 0165.1 and 0165.2 because they have been
They
put into one
combined
policy to
0165.
0165.
Was there anything that was? I didn't see anything in there.
Substantially different.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything that caught my eye. Most of the changes in the policies that you see from me are a result of kind of clarification to changes in grants. So you see a lot of the grant ones are on there, and then just some other specific legal stuff that happened. And I am not recommending the approval of the policy 7530.01 telephone allowance because we have a contract and a benefit package that speaks to that. So the board controls that through that. So it would be could be conflicting in the future.
Sure,
They
with
don't
their
align.
contracts. Any more discussion? because this was a first reading, there's no vote necessary. We will see this in the future. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
Oh,
Oh, no, go ahead. Go
I don't
ahead.
know if we're allowed to
Rewind.
bring this up, but I know we were, in an email, we were talking
Oh,
about
right,
rescheduling the executive session from that was supposed to be earlier today. Do we want to do
Yes.
that now?
Do we want to?
Since we're all here?
Yeah,
Okay,
Okay.
we could.
okay, yeah.
Well, are we suggesting dates and then you check with our attorney?
Yeah, I'd hope to, when I sent the email
Yeah.
out, to have spoken to Eric and get some
Oh,
dates
okay.
from him. I
Yeah.
had sent him a text and sent him an email, and I've not heard back.
Oh.
Do you want us to send you dates and then you can look from
Why
there
don't you
with?
get whatever he's available,
That's-
and
yeah.
then we'll work
I can send
around.
those out to
And
the
then
group
send
then?
what
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
available with,
Yeah.
and we'll go from
Because you
there.
may get a weird mishmash from us, and
Mhm.
if-
Yeah,
if
I'll
you
send,
can't
I'll
meet-
get the dates that he can do.
Yeah.
It's probably easier,
Yeah.
is his schedule, and try to see if we can coordinate
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
Can we,
And
can
our-
we try and do a freestanding meeting so we're not
Yes.
Rushed to
backing
go,
up to
yeah.
another one? Yeah.
Or making him, since we're doing meetings, making him stay until, you know,
Yeah.
late.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my intent.
I know that
Because we
he
already have
couldn't
David
do
Seed
the
on the
one-
front end on the 14th.
Yeah.
And then we have my evaluation after the
Right.
special meeting on the 29th. So the 3 that we already have is kind of booked up, and because of the
Okay.
unfortunate circumstances of trying to coordinate with schedules we already had, it just didn't work out, so we're gonna have to. My recommendation is that we do have it on a separate special meeting.
Yeah.
And the 29th, we're at 5:30, is that correct?
Yes, yep.
And then we're doing your evaluation right after that
The
one.
mid-year review, yeah.
14th. Oh, and we're doing it after the
29th, yeah.
Alright,
Can we,
29.
can we just get like an email with these dates, like these are the.
Yeah.
I know, I
Like
put it
a-
on my calendar.
Right, I know we keep, cause
Next
sometimes we keep
Tuesday.
adding things and I'm like, can we just get a little, you know.
Yep, I'll put that in my Friday update.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Oh, we didn't adjourn. yet.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Someone,
Second?
Please call the roll.
Ms. Payne?
Yes.
Ms. Jesselin?
Yes.
Ms. Iapolo?
Yes.
Ms. Marchaza?
Yes.
Ms. Cook?
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned at 9:16.